Uncharted Snake Swapcast. Sacsayhuaman.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons, monsters and serpents, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Coming to you not live from the 10x10x10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed, high atop the Everest Plateau. And this is I already said this, but I haven't actually said it yet. You guys will hear it yet. Not yet, but you'll hear it again. The third installment of our Swapcast series with Ben from UnchartedX, and this time we were joined by Matt from Ancient Architects, who has made a lot of great videos on his channel looking at all these same questions that we look at. And, Ben describes Matt's channel as Matt's thought process on these things. So it's cool to kind of, and this has happened to Kyle and I too with our show. Like the show is in some way reflective of our thought processes. And you can tell when you listen to the whole back catalog how we've changed our ideas on stuff.
It's aliens and giants. Oh!
Right.
Yeah. Maybe it was humans.
Yeah. Or hominids.
Maybe the humans went to outer space and came back.
And maybe some of them are still there.
Maybe they have elongated telomeres and space genes.
So this time the topic was we went to Peru and we were looking at Ben's footage specifically of Sacsayhuaman and the connecting stuff down into Cuzco and some of the Concha. And it was absolutely fascinating, of course, as always. Yep. Going through Ben's raw footage, it's a great trip. It just makes me even more, I'm just like, God, we got to go there.
And all the teasers during the breaks, which you guys don't get, but man, we're like, when are we doing the next one? Let's do that.
Yeah. Yep.
Good grief. It's awesome stuff.
Yeah, so we've gotten emails and we've got one-up boxes and stuff, but I think we're going to just go straight to the content because we did have a long conversation with Ben and Matt, so let's go ahead and do that. I hope you guys enjoy it. We certainly did. So here it is, our conversation with Ben from UnchartedX and Matt from Ancient Architects about Sacsayhuaman and Cuzco. Joined again. This is our third UnchartedX Brothers of the Serpent Swapcast, and we are joined also by Matt from the Ancient Architects channel. Matt, thanks for joining us on this one, man. Looking forward
no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, looking forward to having your input. So we were talking before we started recording, and you were telling us about you have a master's in geology. Is that right? That's going to help?
Yeah, I mean, when I was undergraduate, I did a degree in geology. Then I did a master's degree where I actually worked on the mission to Mars, Beagle 2 mission to Mars, led by Britain, which actually crashed on Christmas Day 2004, I think. So it didn't actually succeed, but it was a great experience to work at the National Space Center and test rock samples in the labs and all that sort of stuff. And it's given me a good sort of broad background, broad level of information. So it helps me with all this study of ancient history and ancient architecture. And, rock types, structures, is it possible? What's not possible? It really helps me with the work that I do.
Excellent. Wow. So you're a geologist and a rocket scientist. That's good to know.
Yeah.
And a YouTuber.
Yeah. Wow.
And a YouTuber now. Yeah.
A Renaissance man.
Yeah. Bit of everything. But since the geology degree, I didn't actually use it for about 8 years, but
Yeah, but it's like riding a bike, right? It comes back because you're looking at stuff.
Yeah, I've still got all the books.
All right.
Never read them at university, but still.
Yeah, got all the books. Well, Ben, good to have you back on too, man. I think this series has been a lot of fun. So today, what are we looking at? Today?
Thanks. It is good. Well, I thought we'd pivot a little bit away from it. We've done a couple at Egypt, and there's plenty more sites to look at in Egypt. But today, I thought we'd pivot a bit to South America, and I think Sacsayhuaman's probably a good place to start. But also, we'll start there, but then also sort of flow down the hill a little bit and look at Cuzco, because there's some really interesting architecture in the streets of Cuzco. Some of the megalithic stuff's there. Cuzco is just a fascinating town with a bunch of different styles of architecture from different periods, and it was all connected to Sacsayhuaman. So it's kind of like this, the Cuzco area, if you like. We'll start up the top and then go down, and I think there's quite a bit to look at in and around this place. Everyone's sort of seen the zigzag wall at Sacsayhuaman, but there's a lot more to that site. It's a big site, and then there's obviously been a lot of changes to it over the years, ever since the Spanish came through there. We'll get into that stuff, but then there's a lot of evidence of how far that actually did once run down the hill into Cuzco itself, which I think was originally kind of a megalithic city that I think pretty obviously predated the Inca. And again, we'll see a lot of examples of the different styles of work here. There's one of the first videos I made on the channel was a video called, I think that it was something about the Andean architecture styles. It's a sort of a primer on and it's clearer here than in a lot of other places. There's these obvious gaps in style and types of architecture. There's, to me, 3 clear styles of architecture, which we'll get into. But that video kind of sets up, the background for where these styles came from and kind of how they're ordered, because they're always typically in a pretty consistent order. But the most contrasting thing we'll see on all of this is the megalithic work, and then typically really rough, small, primitive work that's been used to repair that stuff and sits on top of it. There's this huge gap between the megalithic work and then what I would attribute as Inca work. But we can get into that stuff as we go. But one of my favorite sites is definitely, I think Peru's starting to open up again. It's so highly recommended for anyone that's interested in this. Go to these places, and Cuzco is just the whole Sacred Valley, really magic place to see a lot of these things.
How many times have you been there?
I think 3 or 4 now. But I have also spent a fair bit of time there. I was there for a month. In one of those trips. I've done tours there. This was really the first trip I had was 2013 down there, and that was with Graham Hancock. Is a story I've told a bunch of times, but that was what kind of the genesis for getting me really deep into this and putting me on the path that kind of led to now where we're sitting here today talking about it. But that was 2013, and I went to Egypt with him a couple of years later again. But really that first trip, he was researching Magicians of the Gods, which was the follow-up to Fingerprints. And he's obviously Hancock's work. Fingerprints was the real famous seminal work from 95. He went and did a lot of other topics at consciousness and the underworld, and looked at a lot of other factors, and even started writing fiction, I think, at that point. But, once he started to research Fingerprints, it was roughly only a few years after kind of the first research for the Younger Dryas started to come out. Because it's an interesting story, because back in Fingerprints day, he was speculating that there must have been a cataclysm, just looking at all the evidence, but there wasn't a real coherent theory, or nothing as strong as the Younger Dryas cosmic impact theory is today. There was Earth crust displacement, a few other things floating around, that he just was speculating that this might be something happened. And then it wasn't until, after the Younger Dryas cosmic impact theory really started to gain traction and had a lot of support, a lot of scientific work behind it. That's when Hancock started to research. It's time to revisit, Fingerprints of the Gods, and that was ultimately Magicians of the Gods. And this was one of his research trips. I think he even in that book tells a couple of the stories that happened while we were on this trip. So, it was just eye-opening. But we can get into it. And I just also wanted to say that Matt, I'm glad that we're chatting. Matt and I speak a lot. We've talked a bunch, and we've been threatening to get together and do a podcast or do a recording for quite a while. So
many months. It's usually me saying no, because I don't usually do these. It's my first ever podcast, so go easy on me.
It's easy.
It's easy and fun.
Yeah. So I'll get this. Let me get this started. I will mute the audio. There's not a lot of audio in this one. We do actually. One of the things towards the end, we'll get part of an interview I did with Brian Forrester down here that we'll get to towards the end. But let's start just rolling with Sacsayhuaman, which sits up at the top of Cuzco. And you guys can see this, okay?
Yeah.
Yep, looking good.
God, the size of those cornerstones, they're just huge, aren't they?
It's enormous.
And you'll see lots of these too. Like this, I'll just pause it real quick. This is the type of thing you see a lot of symbolism that comes back. It gets attributed to the Inca. You can kind of see a paw print almost here. Yeah. You'll see this in a few different places. And I have a couple videos about Sacsayhuaman and certainly get into some of that symbology. I personally think it's something like finding shapes in the clouds. Like if you are looking for a symbol, you're looking for a shape, you're bound to find it. We as humans are great at pattern recognition. It's because there's supposedly humors and all that stuff.
Wonder if there's any paint on it ever, like any remnants of paint where they could have, actually made them come to life. Even if they just saw them, even if they were, they're not on purpose, they might have just saw the shapes themselves and painted them to look iconic. I don't know.
Possibly. Yeah, I don't know of any paint on this, but definitely like the
it's quite a colourful culture, isn't it? The Inca, for example, are quite colourful. Their clothing, their textiles, and the pottery as well.
There was definitely, and I mean, Brian even thinks that some of that stuff could have been some of their patterns in their embroidery could have been almost a written language. There's another one there. This is another quarter. They'd call that a paw print. But some of this is kind of up at the some of the big stones, and we'll go like a full tour down the zigzag wall plus up on the other layers above it, then right up on top of the hill, and then back over behind us. But
so I have a question real quick. I've wondered this, like, are we looking at the bottom of the wall and what are they sitting on? I mean, is there a foundation? Is there foundation stones below the ground? Did they carve it into the bedrock?
It's a good question. We don't really know. I suspect they go down further, and we don't really know if this is ground level, because you do have a lot of accounts, particularly after the Spanish arrived. You had a similar situation in Egypt where it was at one point, I think one of the accounts describes it was the work of all of the town to be digging here. Like the people were digging and excavating and changing everything. So even this layer that we look at today and we walk on, I think that may not be the same layer that it was in the past. You actually, in some places where we'll get up to, you'll see big stones underneath these stones as well. So
I saw that on like a little bit earlier on the other video. There were a few you could see them sitting on something. I just couldn't tell if it was bedrock outcrops or if it was stones that went further down.
I don't know. I mean, I think it was first excavated or fully excavated in 1944. I think it was a guy called John Howland Rowe who excavated the site quite extensively, and there's one of those puma paws again. And so, I'm trying to get hold of that report that he wrote to find out exactly, his eyewitness accounts from the excavations, because that seems to have gone from everywhere. I can't seem to find that anywhere. I think written such a long time ago, probably buried in a university library.
Yeah, and that's probably something worth mentioning about this whole site is that in general in South America, there's way less information about this stuff than you would typically find, say, for Egypt, for example. You've got obviously no written records from the Inca and previous civilizations. Anything that was more or less destroyed. You've got a few accounts from the conquistadors and some of the priests and the as they mixed with the local culture here, and they. I think Clarence Markham and there's a few other people that have got some accounts written down, Garcilaso de la Vega, but very little information in general about this stuff. And it's one of those things, like the Inca don't really ever claim to have built these things, even though we attribute it to them. It's pretty clear as we go around that, there's a lot more going on.
Yeah.
And so is this limestone, and do they know where the quarry is?
It is limestone, I believe. The quarry is, I have heard conflicting reports on it. Brian tells me that the quarry is within, it's like 15 kilometers away. There's quite a distance, the quarry. And what's impressive about that is, you're talking about the Andes mountain range here, right? This is 11,500 feet at Cuzco.
Yeah.
Way up in the steep mountains up in high altitude.
Not an easy terrain.
Right. And it's almost a distinction between, this is a good example. If you're top left corner here, you probably see a lot of this as well. Also in these gaps here, this is one of the big tellers, I think, with the megalithic work. We could talk about the scoops and everything else with it, but in general, the stone, it's basalt or it's limestone or it's something. the megalithic work tends to all be of the same, whatever installation it is, it's of the same stone type. That seemed to be really important. And in most cases, that stone has come from a significant distance. I know there's some granite work in the city, in Cuzco. The quarry's like 30 kilometers away. So they've hauled this stone a long distance over the mountains. And that's juxtaposed with the small repair work that you see on and around this stuff, always on top of it, which means it came later. That is typically andesite, and it's local stone. It's the stuff that they find right in this area. It's rougher work, it's smaller work. And I think it's the Inca. That's the sign of the Inca. The Inca found this. They found Cusco. They found these sites when that empire emerged, and they came down out of the highlands they followed the river, and they found Cusco. I think there was probably an abandoned megalithic city. They found it profound. They respected it. They rebuilt it. They repaired it. They used the stone that was laying around. You see, when we get down in the city, there's tremendous examples of where they would reuse megalithic stone in their buildings, in their works. Quite commonly, you'd see lintels, stones above doorways. That's like, a big basalt stone that's shoved in somewhere, and the rest of the wall's just andesites. Like they would reuse the stuff that was laying around. They'd repair what they could, but in general, it's I think they found it profound and they respected it, and that became a big part of their culture.
Is that another paw there on the upper left? Yeah.
And also, I think the age of these stones will be, you can get an idea from the rock type. Once we know the exact rock type, so if I was up close there now and analysing what rocks they are, because we can see the scoop marks in them, because we can still see, worked surfaces, if it's limestone, it might not be that old, because we can still see these tool marks. But if it's granite or if it's a harder stone, then it could be, or any age really. So I think sort of a geological analysis of the rock type might be the one thing that can help us date it roughly, whether it's 2,000, 1,000, 10,000, 5,000 years old. But it's that sort of scientific work that needs doing on the site, a full geological analysis of the rocks.
But you would also,
even then, they could have been reworked. We don't know.
You'd also have to take into account the climate history of the area and whether or not it was buried too, right?
Well, that's obviously the soil does move. I mean, I was reading a paper quite recently saying that the people who built these sites built different walls for different purposes. So these walls, they were saying, might be so massive because they were trying to hold back as much soil as possible to stop it moving. So it needed to be stronger than in Cuzco, for example. I don't know if that's correct or not, but it's somebody's theory is they were trying to hold back all this soil from creeping down the hill. So they built these giant walls around it. But again, it's a theory, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. This is just to explain. This bit of footage is, so we started off, that was at we'll come back to that, the other end, which is, I guess, the left side looking at the zigzag wall. This is far down the right-hand side at the other end of the zigzag wall. And I like this footage because you can see a similar thing like that, where it's not really serving as a retaining wall here. You've got got like the soil on top of the wall. And I think this is maybe could be an indication of age. It's either where it's been excavated or carved or cleared, but all that dirt, and you can see all the pieces from these walls have been removed. A lot of this has been quarried. I think these walls were generally quite a bit taller, but there are like a number of courses of this wall that goes up the hill. It is almost like a series of, like a walled garden, it creates those flat spaces.
Yeah, it's terraces or something.
It is terracing. That's right.
I'm surprised those terraces haven't crumbled, but the stones have removed. You think they would have crumbled, and
Yeah, it's interesting. The other thing that is, we'll get a better look at this as we go around there. So some of these walls, like where the ground level is lower behind them, they would create these walls, and then it looks like the Inca at least would backfill the walls with material. And what's interesting is that behind some of these stones and in the walls, you'll find megalithic blocks. So it's kind of an interesting, like, how did a megalithic block get in? It's just thrown in there as rubble. Like, someone made those walls, or maybe it was used as a retaining wall later. I don't know, but when you see, like, in a backfill, like, oh, well, they've taken a stone that they've found and they've used it as material in a backfill, it's pretty clear indication to me that it was a repair. Like, they were backfilling these walls as part of a repair process and using blocks that had fallen off the walls and they'd found somewhere else. Maybe they couldn't find where it originally went. So to me, it's like, you wouldn't do that if that was the original building. You know, if you built this site originally, you wouldn't just backfill with a shaped block, you know, that you went to the trouble of shaping and fitting.
No. You just use rubble. You used the bits of stone that you find on the ground. But it's just mind-boggling. The whole thing is mind-boggling. I can't figure out. Some people say it's a fortress. Some say it's a complete ceremonial site. Apparently it wasn't a settlement, Sacsayhuaman, but I don't know. The whole thing is, I think the lack of written record is a real problem, isn't it? No one really knows.
Yeah, definitely.
And even the Spanish chronicles, you don't know how much politics is involved. You don't know what they were told to, you don't know if to believe them or not. It's because, Yeah.
Yeah. It's the whole, the colonial imperative of superiority, right? I mean, there's and how much it comes down to it. A similar thing happened in North American culture with I was talking to Hugh Newman the other day. I had an interesting podcast with him, and we were talking about kind of that imperative. One of the reasons why things like giants and that got covered up back in the day was because there was an imperative to be superior, like the colonial imperative of the white man, all that sort of stuff at that time. Was one of the reasons why they would sort of hide some of that thing, anything that suggested, these people were bigger and stronger than we are, or something like that. And it's just a similar thing that could have happened in the history. And as you say, it's just a big mystery. We don't know. It's the Inca. You hear varying conflicting stories about what the Inca said about this. Some people say that, it appeared overnight. There's other accounts where they say these things were here when they got here. But there's really nowhere where they claim to have built it. Now, there are some accounts from the Spanish, I think Garcilaso de la Vega is one of them, where he did witness the Inca trying to move large stones. Like they would, but really zero technology involved in this. They were just using ropes and manpower, no pulleys, no levers. And I think what he was witnessing was their ongoing efforts to repair and restore these places. Because there's other legends like the legend of the lazy stone that fell down a hill. We'll get to that when we actually get to that stone.
It's the amount of people as well, the amount of people you need to get this done. Because I think what this video is showing me is the scale. It's huge, isn't it? It's absolutely huge.
Oh. Yeah, and I suspect it's a fraction of what was here.
Yeah, because we know they were destroyed by the Spanish to an extent.
It's also interesting because that the appearing overnight legend that recurs in so many sites. I mean, there's the legend about a Baalbek, for example, that Cain built it in a fit of rage in one night, and then Nan Madol, the same thing. The two brothers in one night floated all the stones over and built that place. It's a kind of a similar theme. It's interesting.
It is. Yeah, it is. The whole Shamir thing explained to me. So this is interesting. So this is this. I wanted to pause here and just briefly mention this because most people are familiar with that puffy shaped, no straight lines, right? And in those zigzag walls, that's the real famous part of Sacsayhuaman. However, there was a tremendous amount of pretty linear construction, and the similar thing to what you see inside the Coricancha, which is the big. Now it's a Catholic church in Cuzco in the center, but it's a megalithic building. This is what's left of some of these blocks. Now, on top of the hill where those zigzag walls, the different terraces go up to the top of the hill, and we'll go up there and look at that in this. But there were levels to not only the wall, but on top of the hill, there was a construction that had multiple levels to it as well. And it was pretty much all quarried, all recycled. Wow. And you can see how these blocks are quite square and they've got really nice faces on them. So a lot of these blocks were very valuable building material when the Spanish rolled up. And when they were building their churches, their villas, their homes in Cuzco, this was the source they used for a lot of that building material. And what's interesting is you can find these blocks, a lot of this stuff in all of those like old colonial style buildings down in Cuzco, which we will take a look at a couple of pictures. But just tooling around in Cuzco is a great experience because a lot of these churches, you have megalithic, colonial. It's all, you see the blocks being reused in later construction. And then when they would have to do their own stuff and use concrete, it's just, Cuzco is like one of my favorite places because you've got so many different styles of architecture, right up to modern architecture piled up on top of it. You've got, megalithic, Inca, colonial, and then modern, sometimes all in the same building.
Yeah.
yeah, there's just an element of Sacsayhuaman that most people don't realize was here. Was this linear, a lot of square blocks. This is also andesite. This isn't the limestone. You do have different types of stone here as well. And yeah, so this is kind of proceeding up towards the top of the hill. On top of
those square blocks you say were from the top of the hill. Are they from the structures on the top, or
mostly? I think so. Yep. Yeah, and we'll see that here. But
so we're kind of like the people saying there were towers, and there's all sorts of theories that there could be some of them temples to the rain god and all sorts. Because on top of the hill, I was reading recently, but like I say, a lot of it is guesswork because nobody knows for sure. But is there a Viracocha shrine? No one knows.
Right. Now, are the squarish blocks all of the harder stone, or are there some square limestone blocks as well?
I don't know. There's a lot of andesite up here. And a lot of this may also be some Inca work. But this is, I'm sure there's some limestone up here too. But there's an awful lot of andesite. And again, here's so this is like a good example of one of these walls. See both sides of this, and it's not precisely made in here. This was backfilled. So this may have been constructed by the Inca, parts of this, and then backfilled with other material. And this is the type of thing I was talking about, where in this backfill, they would find megalithic blocks that had been used as backfill, which is like a clear indication that came later. But you can kind of see this here, but there's this big circular series of rings. And this is a really well-known, I know there's a couple people that have some drone footage of it. This would be a great place to get some drone footage of it. But apparently this was multiple levels high. This was a big circular building that had a number of floors and levels in it. And this was a big source of the quarried material as well. And this is what's left today of it. You can't walk over there. There's guards, and you can't get up close to this stuff. And there's still some active work. They're kind of still digging around here and there, at least when I was there last, which was several years ago at this point.
I wanted to ask you about the going back down to the walls real quick. They look like at the corners, after a corner on the inside of the corner, there's like a huge doorway. You had one shot where you were looking down and you could see a bunch of the corners down there, and there's just these massive stones on either side, and there's an opening where you can come up. Do you think that's all original? I mean, you think those were passageways?
Yep, I do. And we'll get back down there. We'll get back down there and go through that stuff in detail. Cool. That's more of that. This is kind of the view from up on top. Let's looking over the back of the hill now. So the zigzag walls behind us. This is looking down into Cuzco, the valley. So this is probably more closer to 12,000 feet. I think Cuzco itself's at 11,500. So it's a good test on altitude sickness. But previously, I think this whole construction flowed down this whole hill, all the way down into Cuzco.
Yeah, you think it's a place where the elite of the day would have lived, looking over their empire, looking over the city, but you think it'd be more than a temple, more than a fortress. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, like a castle / fortress.
Yeah, somewhere where the leaders would be to look over everybody, and it's defensive and it's safe.
They definitely, so it's connected to the city. There were rumors, and this is kind of a hearsay, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. The tunnels.
There's tunnels underneath, right? There's tunnels underneath Cuzco. There's lots of evidence, anecdotal evidence. And what they would say was, and so here we go, Kyle, we're actually going down into the terraces now, and where you see these passageways. But there's a story of like this tunnel that connects from this famous thing inside the Coricancha, it's this wellstone that goes down, and it runs up into Sacsayhuaman. So apparently what they would do, the Inca, they would have the royal Inca, the royal family, or the high priest or whatever, they would start the ceremony in Coricancha, and then they would have the proceedings would then go up, and the whole crowd and everyone would walk up to Sacsayhuaman. But they would basically go and they would start the ceremonies down there, and then the royalty and the high priest would jump in this tunnel, get up here before everyone else, and then appear like magic up at Sacsayhuaman. So it's like there were, you gods, or you have this magical ability to get up there. So there's definitely sorry, I got to also say about the footage. Lots of fast panning going on and shorter clips. This was one of the first times I was really filming on a site, so I got a lot better as the years went by. But there's apologies for like the fast panning. But yeah,
No problem.
I think there's a lot underneath the ground at these places. There's stories of in modern times where they'd be excavating in the street in Cuzco, trying to put in utility lines or something and find a staircase that goes down.
Oh man.
The whole Coricancha, like there's all sorts of stories and legends and pictures even of things underneath the floor tiles of the Coricancha leading down into the underground. That's why I think the Coricancha could almost be its own episode. There's quite a bit going on there, and a lot of secrets, and I think it's all covered up by the church now.
Say no more.
Yeah, pretty much. Father Crespi, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But again, it's a good example. Rebuild walls like this is reconstructed, at least repaired. No passar.
Let's see. We don't really know the complete history, do we, of the valley? I mean, how far? What do archaeologists say? How far it goes back? I mean, I know there's the Wari culture, which is an empire that crumbled about 1000 AD. Before that, I don't know what they've actually recorded before that, and that's a mystery, isn't it?
Sorry about that. Let me just. So there's a number of in the Sacred Valley. They don't say that this goes back much further than that, but there are other parts of South America and Peru in particular that go back much further, like Corral goes back.
Yeah, I did a video on recently. Yeah,
in fact, that's a good site to visit because I've been out to Corral and I've filmed there. It's not a whole. I mean, it's very different. It's down on the coastal desert. There's pyramids and all sorts of things there, and that goes back 5,000 years. That's legitimate.
Yeah, at least. I mean, they've dated that from the sand, well, the bags, haven't they? They've got bags that they found which dated to the same as the 2600 BC.
Right.
But they think it goes much much further back. So that's ridiculous.
Right.
That's crazy, and no one knows about this.
That's right. Yeah, and the other one for me is Chavin, the Chavin culture. I've been halfway through. I have a video for Chavin written, and it's some spectacular footage. And I just want to pause here and point something out too. The Chavin culture goes back much further than the Inca as well. Like it's like thousands of years earlier, and it's supposedly the birthplace of it. Some people, because there's competing theories about where the Inca originally came from. A lot of people say it was Pumapunku Tiwanaku region. And then they moved north from there into the Sacred Valley. And there's some similarities certainly between Chavin. You also have like weird similarities between Pumapunku and Chavin. And Chavin's to the north. Yeah. So Chavin's north of Lima. It's in a different mountain range. And it's not connected to like the Inca road system or anything. It's a real unique little site. Very few people go there anymore. It's great to visit. It's a little bit out of the way, but really, really worth seeing. And it's very interesting, but there's also examples of megalithic work there as well. Like a lot of this stuff, there's these megalithic foundations there, but there's pretty clearly a lot of other work that went on after that, like reassembling it. Plus there was earthquakes and sort of well-known things that happened on that site.
Then you've got the god on the kind of Viracocha Tiwanaku god on the gateway. That's also seen at the Chavin site as well, a different version of it.
That's what
That's so those two, I think it's called the Raimondi stone or the Chavin stone or something. They're both almost like identical gods, but separated by time and distance, and probably both led into the Inca somehow. I don't know. So I think there's so many tribes, so many different people.
Yeah. And
the whole area was, they all seem to come to Cuzco, all from different backgrounds maybe. And then this was before the Inca even arrived. Yeah, and they all came together and built probably their own culture. I don't know whether this was there already, whether they had brought their expertise. And that's the great mystery, because there's little work done, no written record, and we just left to look at physical, archaeology, stonework, and try and figure out what it is.
That's right. Yeah, it's it's just a huge mystery. And I'll let this footage play, but we can keep talking about it. I just wanted to point out you see this on the Coricancha and other ones, these holes through the walls, these little, like, it's almost as if they were drain spouts or something. Yeah, I don't know why they're there, but you see them at a lot of places, including the Coricancha and other constructions, megalithic sites where you have these holes through the walls. It's kind of odd.
Well, the stonework's only half the story, isn't it? Because the irrigation and the terraces. So that was a huge part of the preparation of the land. Whoever did this, it was preparing the farmland, irrigation. Because there's loads of streams in the Cuzco Valley, and they just directed the streams so that the fields could get water.
Yeah.
And the water's got to go somewhere. And they probably know that the water would weather and erode these rocks. So water spouts would be a brilliant idea, which is exactly what we see.
This is interesting because there's no like weathering pattern below. Like you would normally see if water had been flowing out of those holes. Often you would see you'd see a splash mark or whatever you would call it down below it, and either somebody's cleaned it off or that's not what they were doing.
Yeah,
something was put in there.
Yeah,
maybe something. Yeah, maybe it wasn't for water at all. It's just all speculation when it comes to this. It's crazy. And the Inca were masters of this type of stuff too. Like Tipon, there's a few sites like Tipon that definitely are Inca. There's some megalithic stones that they've used in parts of it, but they were incredible at creating these water gardens.
All right, looks like that's a different kind of stone stuck in the middle of that wall.
Different color. Looks like it's been either well reconstructed or that's significant.
Don't know.
That's where open it up. That's where the treasure's at.
I think it's another animal picture. What is it? Let's guess the animal.
Let's see. There's this could be
two legs. It's a bird. Has the beak.
A duck.
It's a puma. Look,
definitely.
It's a poodle. I see a poodle. Look, here's a poodle.
It's a cat.
All right. Yeah. I see all of that. You guys are right. It's also interesting too. I'm noticing that the blocks at the base are in some cases not there, but in some cases are much more weathered than the blocks right above. Yeah, that's also interesting.
Yeah, I'd like to pound this thing with the ground penetrating radar and really map it out if we could.
Yeah,
I don't know. I agree with Matt. I think the more study, the better. We should be doing more.
Although I love ancient mysteries, I absolutely hate them as well because I want to know.
Yes,
humans built them, right? I don't think it's aliens. People do, but I don't think aliens. But I think it's humans built them. But I just want to know who, when, why, and move on. It annoys me that I can't work it out. I just want to find the logical answer. I always think it's got a purpose. They didn't do it for no reason.
Right.
How they did it somehow, whether there's lost technology or whether there's just some really obvious technique we just completely all miss.
Yeah.
Whether they had 1 million people building this wall, therefore it's probably quite easy. Obviously that didn't happen, but there must be a way of doing it and a reason for it. And the stone nubs at the bottom that everyone is talking about on Twitter and everywhere else, there's a purpose for all this stuff. And
the nubs and the notches are fascinating parts. And it's, it seems to me, because in some cases you see these nubs that are very sharp and they actually extend out quite far from the original block, whereas a lot of these they're so worn down that they're almost invisible. And that you were talking about erosion and impossible checking of age. If those nubs, we don't have any way of knowing this, but if those nubs used to be sharp and extend out far, then they've been heavily eroded.
They have. It's interesting, and I'll tease this podcast I did with Hugh Newman again. He gave me some fresh perspective on what the nubs and the scoop marks could be. I liked his explanation for it. He explains it well in this podcast, which hopefully I'll release here in a week or so.
All right. Looking forward to it.
But and it was a new explanation for it, which made some sense to me. And then, I was like, that could be a good explanation for the scoops and the nubs. And I'm interested to hear what the Twitter crew, Andrew.
I like ideas. I like the theories. I like the ideas because I think putting something out there is good. It's going to get scrutinized. I've done every idea on the Great Pyramid in the past, from a giant water pump to a power station to everything to ended up with Khufu's tomb, as everyone knows. But it's kind of, if you don't put ideas out there and don't look at them, you're never going to find out the answer. And the same with the nubs. I've followed the guys on Twitter, and everything from stone language to some of them were for lifting, some of them were for, there's so many different ideas. And I think you throw them all out there, but all of a sudden there'll be evidence against your idea and then back to square one, which is why it's a mystery.
Yep.
That's right. Yeah, it's good. It needs to be tested in that marketplace of ideas. Like I try not to be attached to any one particular theory. Like my opinion on this stuff is as a result of, years of careful consideration. Like I have but I'm still willing to throw it out in light of new evidence. Like, it's got, logical, got to make sense, and you go through that process. But it's dangerous to get too attached to one theory or the other. I think the older civilization, the precursor civilization, to me is the one that makes the most sense based on all the evidence we have, based on what the ancients themselves said, based on the new evidence coming from the scientific realm in terms of the Younger Dryas cataclysm, the extension of the human timeline, genetics. There's a lot that suggests that our past is way longer and more complicated than we thought it was.
Also, on that pitch there's a base that they're sitting on.
Yeah, I was wondering
about the base earlier.
Is that some kind of repair, or is that original?
That looks like bedrock that's been leveled.
That's what I've heard too.
I don't know. That's what
I've read in a couple of places. Yeah, I've read in a couple of places that they are supposed to be socketed into bedrock. So that may
even
be
more stability. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the second pyramid. It's that.
Yes, that's right.
Lock it to the ground.
I would like to say that there does seem to be a pattern in the construction. I mean, it looks random at first glance, but as you're going along, there's definitely this pattern of like the sort of a widening and narrowing line of the courses, and when it widens, it's like there's that paw print. It's a sort of a central stone with all these stones laid around it, and then the courses kind of come together again, and then they widen back apart, and it's like, I don't know, it's really, really beautiful.
You have the huge stones on the corners always.
Yes.
Yeah, and some of these are gigantic. I think I've heard, 150, 200 ton, some of these stones.
Yeah.
Massive.
Same.
And look at the joints between those. That's just amazing.
We didn't even talk about it because we just it's one of those things people realize. But again, no mortar, but the joinery is so fine, even with the large stones, you can't stick a credit card between these joints. It's just so well done. And that's what blows my mind about this stuff is that there's no straight lines on these joins. Like, you have to, it's like this 3-dimensional puzzle that you have to match. Each surface has to match the other surface perfectly. And we'll get actually a good look later on in Cuzco at some of the inside surfaces of these joins, which is where I think some of the real evidence for some form of advanced shaping or stone, some way of shaping the stone must have occurred, because it's not just a surface join. Like, that join, it penetrates into the stone. It's that depth, and that they match perfectly along their depth.
There was a giant rock a couple of seconds back in the video that had a lip at the bottom, like it was missing something that used to be socketed into it.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. It looked like there was a giant
keep going back. It was
missing.
like 3 corners back.
There was
something.
a doorway. There was an opening.
Yeah, right there. Keep going back a little bit more. Yeah, see that lip?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I think I think it's around this corner here.
It's like it's missing the.
It's around here.
Yeah, it's that corner. Yeah, it's like there was something socketed there. It looks like almost.
These blocks here are so rough, aren't they?
Yeah, they're incredibly rough.
So rough. It's like.
Right.
It's almost like I don't care how it looks as long as it does its job. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that looks like it's been faced for a joint.
Yeah, it's been faced on that side
This looks like the phase 1 masonry that you talked about in your videos. Yeah, where it's huge megalithic blocks that have been shaped.
Yeah.
So it's like that block's been reused for this phase, for that cornerstone. I don't know.
Yeah. It's so old, it's heavily eroded.
If we get time, I'd love to show maybe after one of the breaks, we can do a quick look at Kenko, because this is very similar to Kenko, which is, again, this is mostly the second style. It's a real brief overview of the styles. The first one, Hanan Pacha, the older style. And we'll see there are examples of it, not on the zigzag wall, but after a break, we'll see the other side of Sacsayhuaman, where there's a fair bit of Hanan Pacha, which is it's the monolithic rock. It's the living rock of the mountain that's been shaped. It's not made up of blocks. It's not cellular. That's all. If that's there, that's always the lowest layer. That's on the bottom. It always looks to be the most weathered, and just visually the oldest. Not that I'm an expert on how stone ages, but a lot of that stuff looks tremendously ancient to me. And then it shares some characteristics with this, which is Uran Pacha, the cellular. Polygonal walls. This is all Uran Pacha here. in my mind, and it shares like the vitrification. It shares some of the giant aspect of it. In some cases, some of the precision of the surfaces and the joinery. And then you have Ikunpacha, which is this stuff here, which is more or less the Inca work. It's the rough stone. You see those three styles.
Yeah, and
we'll see that first style a bit more.
Speaking of a break, Kyle and I have been so fascinated by the video that we were not watching the timer. So yeah, we should take one.
Okay. All right. Let's take a quick break and we'll come back and finish up.
This is great, man.
And we're back. And I don't know where we're going, but this is absolutely fascinating, Ben.
Yeah.
Cheers. Yeah. It's happy to share the footage. We were saying in the break that it's just, the format's great. Like there's so many sites in Peru and so many of these places where there's not a lot of research. There's just not much to say about a lot of the sites, but just looking at that footage and looking at them, I think is pretty entertaining. They're tough to make kind of research, produce videos on a lot of these places. So I like this format where we get to kind of spend a bit more time with raw footage and just have it around.
I think for me, where I've just, everyone's seen my videos where it's just images that I'm showing, and on the internet, you can only find certain images. You can't get a feel for what the place is actually like. So this is invaluable for anyone trying to research. You can't get there yourself.
I totally agree. It's exactly right. You get the scale, and as he's moving through, you start to understand the complexity of the problem. Look, there's another. Is that another paw? That's a big one.
It is. Yeah, you could call it another big paw. Yep. And just the scoop marks in the stone are very interesting to me. There's nubs and then there's scoops. It's like material.
They're inverted. Yeah.
Yep. So going back to what you were saying in the beginning about the quarrying. You think that you were saying that the Inca just kind of used whatever was laying around. So these walls don't look like they have a top. So it looks, unless you think it was designed that way, I don't know. But where are all the stones that fell off? Are they all in the backfill? Were they cleaned out by the Inca?
I think these were probably a little bit taller. I think in some of these courses or terraces may have had roofing over them as well. But originally, they would. I think they recycled a lot of the stone that they could. They would put together and they'd put back the stones that they could figure out where they went. I think, there's a lot of this material was used. I mean, I don't know where the big stones ended up. I mean, a lot of it may have been
Spanish as well. Didn't the Spanish destroy some of it as well?
They definitely destroyed a lot of it. But this would be hard work trying to destroy it, honestly.
Yeah.
Yes. Go at it with it.
It couldn't do much more than that.
Just to destroy one rock.
I think you're looking at the big stuff that they couldn't destroy. Like they just couldn't. So they may, a lot of that stuff up top may have, smashed up, and like maybe some of these smaller stones are chunks of the larger stone. Like it almost looks like pieces like this that were then reused to rebuild walls.
Because it's very unlike.
It's a guess too. Like I don't know.
It's very unlike Egypt when we're going through you're walking around the pyramid in the videos of the last Swapcast, and there's just rubble everywhere. Whereas here it's like very clean. So it's curious.
Yeah, a lot of it's been carted off, and as I said, there was a lot of digging that went on here in that colonial period. A lot of people digging around for treasure, just trying to dig stuff up. They thought there was gold. I mean, that was also the Spanish would break into stuff. They thought there were vaults in some of the stone. They thought there was, they just destroy stuff looking for gold. There's some really, really bad things. Like it's just reprehensible behavior. It's hard not to just condemn it. So I want to mention this briefly too, because this is kind of looking away that, again, the zigzag wall is now behind us in the field, and behind it there's a whole hill, and then Sacsayhuaman extends over this hill, and you can see this like extruded stone that's natural shaping, but you also have like these carved shapes in the stone. You can kind of see everywhere it's like work surfaces everywhere, everywhere you look. And then some of them are quite regular and quite flat and square. Then there's a very famous little installation up on top of here that we'll get to called the Inca Thrones. They call them Inca Thrones.
Oh, yeah.
But it's like a stepped pattern that's carved into it. And this is Hanan Pacha. Like, this is the monolithic work that's been done into the living rock of the mountain itself. It's really interesting. A lot of people say it's quarrying. I think there's examples of where it's clearly not quarrying, and it was done for some other purpose. So yeah, so we pan around, you can see there's the zigzag wall. You kind of walk up on top of these hills behind it.
Well, I'm very interested in that geological formation back there. What is? How do you think that came about?
It's hard to see without looking close. It looks. Let's have a look.
It
looks like a valley going. Yeah, it depends what it is again. I mean, the little valley could have been formed by a stream that, could have run down the hill, eroding it to form like a V.
It's so curved. Smooth curves like that.
Steps. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like it's extruded, almost like it's a plutonic, I think is the term. Like it's formed from an extrusion and of heat that's formed that, and it's either come up to the surface that's been pushed up. There's actually a place around the back called the Inca Slides. And it's so well polished, it's like this, and it flows down a hill, and all the little kids will get up and slide down, and you're just like, any given day at Sacsayhuaman, there's a train of like little kids sliding down these Inca slides at the back of Sacsayhuaman. It's pretty cool. It all
comes down to the rock type again, though. What is it? We don't know what it is yet. If it is, it could well be a lava flow. It could be a limestone beds that have been polished, weathered by water. We don't know, but it's.
I think it's Andean. I don't think the limestone is natural to this hilltop. I think it's Andean.
Right.
I'm not sure.
Wow.
And this right here, just so when we pan across it, this is what's called the Inca Thrones, and these are these regular carved sort of stepped platforms right into the rock here, and it's like square corners. There's it's quite regular, and it's good work.
I've got the idea, looking through this and this is an indication of it, and there's plenty of other places around here and in Peru and in the valley that are like this, that they kind of, it's like somebody was going through the area carving almost whimsically carving stuff into the bedrock. It's like they were playing, it's like
just for fun.
Yeah, it's like they were playing with a tool that was very powerful, and they're just like, well, what can I do with this? Let's cut some shapes out here, and and then you move on to the next spot and try something else, and because it's hard to see how they were functional, but maybe they were. I don't know. But it's almost artistically whimsical. Like, I was imagining, the little kid steals a power tool out of his dad's workshop and goes out in the woods and starts cutting stuff. And you end up with trees with little notches cut out of them, and I don't know.
That experience.
Yeah, you're just playing with a tool. It's really strange.
Or it could be that there was an inclusion in the rock that they wanted for a specific part of the building, and they're like, "Oh, look at this crystal. Let's cut that out." With
a lightsaber.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me pull something up here that Temple of the Moon.
Yeah, the Temple of the Moon.
This to me, this is just so. Here's a good example of it. Like this is, it's almost like as if it was flowing too. It's this weird. Oh, that's a little jerky. Settle down. It is pulling this over a network for me too. I just wanted to show you up on top of the Temple of the Moon, but this is these weird, just random, and you see this everywhere. Like everywhere. You could probably just there's in areas that aren't roped off. They're not part of sites. You just see this on bedrock. I mean,
it's like, and the angles are so well done, but they thought, I will leave the rest. We'll do these bits nice and just forget the back of it.
That's what I mean. It's like the tool that they were using gave them precision, but they weren't really actually worried about precision. But when they were making these cuts, it's flat and gives you sharp edges, like the nature of the tool did that somehow.
Yeah,
it's just weird.
It is, and it to me again looks ancient. Like I don't know, maybe it's just the stone. It's just weathered. It just seems more. This is an area called the Temple of the Moon. That's over here. You walk, and again, this is all of these sites. This is around Cuzco. You visit all these in a day from Cuzco. It's up on the hills around Cuzco. Let me skip forward real quick. We'll come back to Sacsay in a minute. I just wanted to show you what's on top of the Temple of the Moon here.
Yes, and
this is actually there's a cave. There's the whole big sperm thing on the wall going in here. It's quite famous. But up on top of this and inside, this is all shaped from that living
You can
rock.
see, yeah.
It's and just looks incredibly ancient. Again, like this is part of it.
Right.
All of this has been shaped, and it's just all part of that living rock.
Yes,
and it's
there's
just
a cave under here, and there's actually stuff with the. Oh yeah, this you can,
Yeah, this is the
it just
Han
looks-
Pacha. It's rock cut as opposed to megalithic, right?
yep.
Yeah.
And I don't understand it. And there's in some areas like there's circular formations. There's little bowls with channels, almost as if the stone's been melted. It's it's insane. Like there's these weird markings in all of them, but it's undeniably been shaped. There's it's not a natural.
This looks more limestone with all the holes in it. It looks more. I don't know if it is, but it looks more limestoney. But
Yeah.
I just find it so weird that it all looks half finished. Like it's like building the Great Pyramid, but I'll leave the west side just to leave that rough. It's like they've created these amazing structures, these steps, these lovely faces, and then I'll forget the other bit. I can't be bothered with that. Let's go to the next thing. Let's build a wall over there instead.
Yeah, it's that's what I'm saying. It's almost whimsical, right?
It's just amazing. It's incredible.
Yeah, and I really have problem trying to understand it. I mean, this is in the same area. I want to just really quickly get to like this. See, there's these channels that are cut in it. That they're like water channels. There's a couple of like circle. I know this is flipping around for you guys. Sorry about that. Let me put it over here so you can actually see it.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, again, all shaped. I'm trying to find something specific here. Very odd, though. And again, see, either half finished or just incredibly weathered. Like
yes,
like outside the like hundreds of thousands of years. Who knows? It just to me, it's I don't I just can't compute with this stuff. Like a lot of this. I'm trying to find a specific thing
Because some cut faces look nice and flat still.
Oh,
Like that
look
bowl,
at that.
yeah, looks.
Yeah.
It looks beautifully made still. It looked like the bowl looks kind of unweathered, but all around it, the rock is just been left. I don't know. Can't figure it out.
Stuff's everywhere. It's just it's random. Whimsical is a good term. I say And so you can spend hours just wandering around these sites, and it's just the picture doesn't become any clearer. It's very mysterious, and
Maybe it's the training camp where they train to create the big walls. Go and play on these rocks.
Yeah, learn how
And
to
if
use
you do a
the
nice
lightsaber.
straight right angle, you can go onto the main site.
It's the training site. Yeah.
If it's not a right angle, you're out. On the fields and the farms.
It just seems like, if you're using conventional known methods with chisels and stuff, it seems like a lot of work for what? What were they doing?
Right. Yeah. And how did it get in this state? Like, what was it for? Like, what was here? Yeah. Anyway, so we'll get into more Peru and more of these weird little corners of it in some more sessions. Let's get back to
that's where they were calibrating the shamir.
That's true.
It's just smear calibration. Yeah. So, and this is probably worth
A bit more to the left, a bit more.
Yeah, all the power up. Yeah, the shamir is an interesting legend. I didn't know about this, and you guys told me about it. I think it was after the show, the last Swapcast.
That's right.
The legends of the shamir is comes from like I think Jewish tales of how Moses carved the 10 Commandments on the stone, and the temple in Jerusalem was built.
Yes,
and it was silent. There was no pickaxes, and it was a tool that was apparently you could use to shape stone effortlessly. Which
That's
is
right.
Very, very interesting.
That's
very
Something that I want to do more research on, figure out. We can talk more. Anyway, so I'll set up this footage too. Again, this kind of looks like what we were just looking at, but this is also Sacsayhuaman over the back of that hill with the extruded stone.
Okay.
So this sort of wanders out into this acreage that's behind this hill, and again on the other side from where the zigzag wall is. So, and this is a lot of the Han Pacha worked stone. And what you'll see in a lot of this are these very strange shapes. I think one thing you notice here is also cataclysmic damage. It's tremendous. Looks like it's been jumbled up, like upside down staircases. Things have been moved around, and some of them quite big chunks of rock, and just shaped stone everywhere. Really odd.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
That is
It's almost
just
like it's upside
amazing.
down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like there's your upside down staircase.
Oh,
Looks
wow,
like
yeah.
there's a few of those have been flipped
So
over.
strange.
Yeah, that's big. It would take a lot of force to flip that over.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any indication that that whole section on the right was on top of the left part?
Could have been. I don't know that people have done research to try and match shapes together like that. It's so random.
Well, I don't know. I mean, look down that hallway you just passed. It's like those
Yeah.
two walls look pretty parallel. Maybe
Yeah, true.
they cut it like that.
You could spend a lifetime working on this and find no answers.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could get in there and get a point cloud with LiDAR of the shapes of them and then use a computer to see if you could turn it
Computer
around and
them
put them
all.
together. Yeah.
Oh man,
That would be cool.
That's what they did with Tio and Arco, isn't it? Puma Pumku. They got all the shapes and someone tried to rebuild them with a model to try and see what the temple would have looked like.
Yeah.
And it's quite an interesting study to read it and see what they actually created. But doing it here would be pretty difficult.
It would be tough. Yeah. And like a lot of them are half buried, it looks like too. So you wouldn't be getting the full shapes. Yeah.
Indeed, well, it's half buried, and here's a good example of something that you also see on a lot of these South American sites, and it's that, and I mentioned it in my videos because, and Brian and a bunch of people mention it. It's the circular protection and the reverence that seems to have been held for the older work. Like so, this stuff in the center that's the gray, the grayer color, the monolithic work, Hanan Pacha. It's just like assuming it's the oldest style. You then have the Uran Pacha, the megalithic work is created almost lovingly or protectively around it. Like this is actually a big circle. And you see this in a lot of places. This crazy, random, whimsical stonework seems to have been very highly prized and respected by later builders. Also then the Inca. So here's an example. You see all three styles of masonry here. This shaped stone in the center with the monolithic stuff. You have the megalithic work, and then you have the smaller stones from what is the Inca work. But it always seems to be very protective of the oldest part of it. This what appears to be the oldest part of it to me, anyway.
So it's like the Inca had respect for those that built the walls, and then both of them had respect for those that built these things. It's kind of it's strange. It's like a continuation of a culture that may span however many years. They had the same belief system almost, like
It's like
until the Spanish arrived and thought, forget a lot of it, let's destroy it all. It's kind of
set that on fire and start over. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like we all do. Yeah. All the cultures of the Western cultures do that, don't they? British culture as well have done that in history. Destroy something and rebuild.
it's almost
That's that colonial period, right? That's what led us to it. This is interesting too. Again, a sign of damage where I think that what's happened here, these big chunks have been moved around at some point. That may also indicate that this megalithic stuff is quite old, because this is one of the rarest things where you'll see a megalithic block that goes behind, or it's as if this work, this Hanan Pacha work, this big chunk of rock has basically been moved or has ended up in front of the block. So you can see here, it's kind of moved or it's shifted where you've got this block stuck behind it. Very rarely do you see examples of the megalithic work. Like this has clearly been moved after these blocks were put here. But in almost every other case, always you find this megalithic stuff is these cellular blocks are on top of the older style.
Built onto it, and protecting it,
But there are a couple of places where it's like, all right, something happened. I think that's an explanation for it. To the exception case, it's like, well, this big chunk has been moved, or something happened. It was an earthquake, or it was who knows, like a giant just cataclysm, perhaps.
Yes.
this looks like a cemetery for a civilization or something.
Yeah.
Like there's like the really ancient stuff, and then a memorial is built around it. And those people leave, and then another memorial is built around that stuff.
Right.
It's crazy.
There was an interesting little, like a notch in the megalithic wall back there too that didn't go all the way through. It was just like a small square, maybe 6 inches deep. Yeah.
Yep.
Because the official story is it's 1100 AD, Sacsayhuaman.
Yep.
And
Something
that's
like
based
that.
on pottery and radiocarbon dates. But the thing is,
Hot shards.
finding the paper for this is difficult. Like, it's mentioned on Wikipedia. It's mentioned by, in news stories by archaeologists. But to find out the actual detail of it is really hard to find. So I think that needs scrutinizing again, because like I said, there's multiple phases of work here. Whatever the ages of the actual walls are, you've got this stonework, which is protected by the walls, which is definitely older. So I don't know. For me, my next stage is to find all the old papers, read them again, scrutinize them, put the information out there, and go from there. Because I can't be there, I'm not being in the field. I can see from these videos that it's, it's a complete mystery. But all I can do from sitting in England is read the papers, read what's been done already, and then try and look at the evidence and go from there. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. It's trying to find those old papers and read the old writings and try and build an idea, because I just want to solve the mystery, even though I'm not going to solve it, but I want to solve it. This year, maybe this month.
You might do it.
Do it. Well, your work's amazing. Like that's a lot of your. I know you've explained this to me in the past, but a lot of your work is your thought process. Like you're seeing in a lot of your videos, you progressing through the ideas and doing research and developing your own ideas and theories. That's awesome. You're very dedicated. It's great.
It's like I'm not saying that I've got all the answers, everyone else is right. It's like I'm doing what satisfies my brain. If this works for me now, great. But then somebody I did a video that I looked at the Sphinx, for example, and the evidence was saying it's this age, and then a geologist emailed me out of the blue to say, here's the work that I've just done. I read it and thought, oh yeah, that changes everything. But I'll do a video to say, I've just been sent this. And so the whole channel is the evolution of me. I started out by reading some Graham Hancock books when I was a teenager, and then made a few videos about that. And then I did more and more reading, learning more and more. And I think it's me evolving, and I got no idea what I'll think this time next year. I've got no idea if my mind will change because I found some new bit of information. I want everything to be 100,000-year-old, built by hobbits and giants. That's what I want everything to be, and I just want to somehow prove that. But that's the idea. I'd love there to be real stargates and aliens and stuff. And that's what got me interested, because people were saying this is almost possible. But I don't know. I'm getting a bit more boring as I'm learning more. But there's still so many mysteries to unravel, so much to learn.
And I think following the evidence is the way that
all I can do. Yeah.
Going to get resolved. Like we just have to follow the evidence wherever it leads, and I've said this before too. If I as I said before, like my position is based on my research and where I think it lays. But if getting closer to the truth means that all of those ideas get destroyed, then I'm fine with it. Because I'm the same. My objective would be to let's get to the truth. I'm not attached to a particular idea one way or the other. I think there's
I'm exactly the same. Yeah.
And my angle is in a lot of cases with that technological aspect to it. And in the stonework, I really enjoy the work of the engineers, Chris Dunn, those kinds of guys and I think there was a spirit of that type of thing was established with Petrie and guys like that.
Yeah.
It's in a lot of these cases, I just think where it leads may not be that, this, like you said, this crazy sort of Stargate type thing. But I do think that it's certainly not a version of the past, and what we think about it is just not accurate. This primitive culture idea that we seem to have about a lot of these whether it be at the South American megalithic culture or even the dynastic Egyptians, I just think there was something else going on one way or the other. Either we've completely misjudged these civilizations, because I keep ending up at the same place, which is you can't explain the evidence we see in the stonework and the architecture with the tools and techniques that we're attributing to these guys. And
that's right.
It doesn't line up. And
there's two things, isn't it? It's finding the evidence of who built it, and then finding the evidence of how they built it. Because whether this was built by the Inca, which we don't think it was, but whether it was, okay, so they did it. We've got evidence. They've all of a sudden proved it. We've got no idea how they did it. They didn't have the wheel. They didn't have, they were warriors. They were expanding the empire. They haven't got time to build this. They've got other things to do. And the same with like pyramids. Okay, whoever built it, this person built it, but how? I got no idea. I'm not pretending to ever get all those answers.
Yeah, it's almost like we haven't become a megalithic culture yet.
Yeah, I mean the amazing pots. Yeah, I mean in Egypt there's those amazing stone pots and the drill holes and all those things. I have no idea how they're done, and why would you bother? It's like the hardest way of doing something.
Yes, no, that's right.
And you've got clay. Use clay.
Yeah.
Well, that's the remarkable thing in the Egyptian Museum. You literally see clay pottery in the same case next to these exquisite stone jars made from diorite, and come on, they're worlds apart, but we put them. They were found in the same place, and we can date the pottery and the pot shards, and boom, that's where it comes from. I mean,
I think that's important. We need to understand that side of it, the pot shards and the archaeology. But
sure, yeah.
But then it's kind of marrying it up, and so it makes sense and it's logical because things like this site, I've done all the background reading last few weeks that it's the pottery is this age, and that's all the archaeological evidence that I haven't been able to review yet. But then when you look around the site, like you're showing us now, that stone there with the little stairs on it, and what is it? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't fit in any. There's no function to that clearly in my head. It's bizarre.
It's,
what is it?
MC Escher.
Yeah,
that's what it makes me think of.
This is an interesting stone. So we saw the footage that we were watching while we were talking was what I like to call the little Inca hot tub. There was a real small circle.
Yes. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, we saw that. And then this is in particular a famous stone. This is called the Lazy Stone. And there's a legend that goes along the lines of the Inca tried to move this and they couldn't, there's a stone like this, and I think there's a legend that said thousands of Inca were killed when they tried to move it. Like it fell down a hill and landed, and supposedly also landed on top of the entrance to a tunnel, because there's at the backside here they've actually split the rock and they've tried to get access to something underneath it. So this is apparently something. I don't know if that's true. To me, this almost looks like, I can't tell if this is a natural part of the bedrock and the hill, or if this is actually a giant boulder. It's
hard, isn't it? Because you can't see the base.
Yeah, and you typically will get chased away from going over here. We managed to sneak over here, and you see no end of the Inca terracing too. This is the other remarkable part about the Sacred Valley is that, and this is generally all Inca work, probably for agriculture, but they terraced the hell out of that place. Like the mountainsides are all terraced. They're super steep, but they made these flat terraces and they grew their crops. They had different agricultural zones up and down the hills for, in different elevations. They grow different crops. And the Inca was a remarkable civilization. I mean, they had law and order. They had, there was equal rights. They treated women
no money and no markets.
Money and no markets, right? It was just it was quite astonishing. I'm not, I don't think they were capable of doing some of the megalithic stuff that we see, but it was a remarkable civilization.
Yeah, and again, you look at stuff like this, you're like, even if they could, why? What is that for? It's just hard to understand what the purpose of that could have been, unless it's so old that it's just heavily eroded. But it's weird because some of the cut areas still have sharp edges in some cases, so it's hard to understand what's going on there.
Yeah, and here's the backside of this stone where it's been split, and you can kind of see the staircase shape here where it's been split on the rock, and then there's the other side of it here. This is kind of cracked right open.
Yeah, that's strange.
And you can find this if you go to Sacsayhuaman, go over the back of the hill and just try and ignore the whistles if they blow it. You go and have a look at it. It's not.
They don't want you to go back there, huh?
No, this isn't kind of part of the park, but I think this is an important piece. It is, and there's a ton of other little sites around here. There's a place called Zone X. It's these cavern systems, but there's a number of these sites that are down in and around Cuzco itself. Sorry, I'm dancing around. That footage isn't great, but
so the idea is that there might be that this might be blocking some entrance, and that's why they were trying to
tunnel.
Yeah,
they were trying to get to, and they.
And I see there's like sharp blocks lying around on the ground too.
Yeah.
But it's these legends and like oral history, which is also important. Not everyone takes it seriously, do they? And if it's a legend that there's a cave under there, it should be explored. It should be geophysics, get in there, check if there is, because that could be the answer to it all. It could be leading down to a hall of information and whatever. You don't know what's in there, do you? If there's things like that are still underground, still unexplored. It's part of the puzzle. It's part of the story that we need to
It does
go
drive
inside
me
and
crazy.
investigate.
Yeah, it drives me crazy that we don't do more of that. In fact, I don't have footage of it here. There are a few little cavern sections, like crawl throughs, where you can go through at Sacsayhuaman, and pitch black. Like there's enough corners where you can actually get into an area that's pitch black. Like you can't see your hand in front of your face, kind of thing. So there's a lot of that going on. I think here. I think there was quite a bit underground.
Yeah,
which is begs the question why.
There's strange cut surfaces on all of these boulders we're looking at. That in some cases on one side it's just a raw boulder, and then you turn around and then it's been flattened and there's a couple of sharp shapes cut out of it. It's
the Inca thrones.
Yeah.
So what are these?
Maybe there was some sort of connection
caves?
to nature. I don't know. Maybe there was. Sorry. Maybe there was. They did believe in some sort of connection to nature where they, I don't know, had to keep it looking naturalistic. I don't know. Just another idea.
Yeah. Could just be in other words, a style preference or something.
Yeah.
I was going to ask Ben, what do these caves look like? Are they cut or are they natural caves, or what are we talking about here?
They do look like they've been worked in areas. Yes. We're back at the Inca hot tub here. Maybe we saw this little clip earlier. But yeah, there's a lot of them I think are probably natural. They started that way, and then you do see like worked surfaces in there. And Kenko, which I think we looked at briefly in the break, is another site that we can take a close look at. It's another one around Cuzco. Has a lot of walkthroughs and passages that you can go through that are similar to those caves, although they're kind of open to the sky now. It's one of those spaces there probably was a roof. But yeah, it's a combination. I think you've got it is very flowing and organic in some way. Like as you said, it does.
Do you get lost when you're in there? Do you know where you are? Or do you just kind of?
In some spots you can, yeah.
I've got no idea where I am watching this, and I've looked at so many pictures over the last few weeks.
There's extruded rock at the back here. This is like over the backside here is Sacsayhuaman, the zigzag walls over this hill. We're about done with Sacsayhuaman here, and then we're walking out, and then towards the left end of it, you can see the big Jeebus statue over Cuzco. And then actually some of these caves are in this area down in here. You can walk through, sort of takes you through some of this bedrocky type stuff, and then you've got more of these what was obviously buildings on the ground. At some point there was these were probably much taller. A lot of this stone's probably been quarried and taken away.
Yeah. So we're gonna go look at Cuzco. We take a break and do that. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah. If you want to take another break, we can. I think next is Cuzco. Yes, we'll do Cuzco, and yeah.
All right. Let's take a break and then go to Cuzco. And we are back. Third segment with Ben and Matt, and I think we're going to be looking at Cuzco and maybe some of the Coricancha, right?
Yeah. Yes. So we've gone from Sacsayhuaman, and now what I've lined up here. I don't have. We could spend an hour, a couple of hours probably talking about the Coricancha, but what I wanted to look at was kind of the outside wall of it, because this forms part of the streets of Cuzco, which, as I said before, pretty much is this megalithic city that has a lot of megalithic origins to it. And we'll also get to look at, the Inca Roca wall and the real famous parts of it. But what is interesting about the walls of the Coricancha, which is what we're seeing here, and I'll hit this as we go, is it's a different style. It's this almost linear architecture, but you still have vitrified stone. You still have nubs if you look up high on the wall. But it's not quite straight, and that's what's quite remarkable about this. The walls of the Coricancha, to me, again, mortarless stone. You have those same holes through some parts of the stone here that we saw at Sacsayhuaman. But when you get up close and you look at the precision of the joinery, the fact that it isn't straight is what's remarkable. Like this isn't cast. Like this would be another, some people might suggest geopolymer, but it's every stone's slightly different. And some of the joinery is just kind of remarkable.
I was about to say, it's like this wall looks like it's been built to have a better finish on purpose. But then you see those stone nubs again, which makes it look unfinished. You know, I know it's people believe that they're for a reason, but if you think this wall was meant to look beautiful and flat, you just knock those bits off because they stick out and it looks weird. Right. I don't know. It's compared to the other walls in Cuzco, this looks more uniform, more, I don't know, regal, more.
Yep.
Yeah, for a purpose. It's so close to uniform that if they would have gone all the way uniform, it would have been really easy to build. But because they're slightly not uniform,
they made it harder for themselves.
That makes it way harder to put together so finely.
Yeah. Let me just I'll add a little more here because I just wanted to take a closer look at these joints. I know I did in this video. And they're very fine work. It's so tight, but also so not regular.
Look at that.
Not great. Like these curves, and you have to, you've got at least 2 stones involved in this, and then later on we'll see examples of. There's one famous stone in the Inca Roca wall called the 12-sided stone that has 12 sides that meets 12 other stones, and it's just all perfect. Like I can just only speculate as to how this may have been done. It's literally, I hate saying it because I can't explain how this happened, and there's certainly nothing evidence we don't understand how this. But as to me, it's almost as if the stone was like toffee, and it was shaped and it's been mashed together. Because I have real trouble believing that this was done with hammers and chisel, and you keep putting a stone in and out and try to until you get that perfect surface. Because you run into that same problem you see in some of the Egyptian things. Is like at some point in a reductive process, if you take too much out, you're hosed.
Yeah, you got to start over. You
got to start over entirely, and you just don't have any examples of that.
This isn't like earthquake proof. It would have been easy just to make that flat. Get whatever tool you're using and just flatten it off. So they're not trying to make an earthquake proof wall. So there's no point in making it harder. I don't get it.
So for people who are listening, the joint spinner showing us is like there's a stone and then there's a join in the middle of that stone at the top. And the stone on the left is a little bit set down farther in the stone that it's sitting on than the stone on the right of the joint. It's like they had to custom make every join and every fitting. And every block is they're very square and regular, but every block is slightly different, and then all the joints are slightly different, so that everything is basically custom. There's no, it's so close to being regular, but it's not quite, which makes it way harder than it needs to be. It's very interesting. Do you know what kind of stone this is? Again, this is
I think so. A lot of the stuff in Cuzco is some form of granite, from what I understand.
Okay.
Like there's definitely andesite in the Coricancha, and there's some of the Inca Roca walls that are a form of granite. From what I understand, it's a different color granite than what you see in Egypt, but it's very hard stone.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, people say that where the rocks join, the actual rock goes finer grained, which is why some people think it has been melted, vitrified, because it's recrystallized at a small grain size. Obviously, if you can't melt granite and recrystallize granites, it'll be a much, much smaller grain size and much more smaller crystal size. Yeah, because the crystal size is smaller at the joints, makes people think that, or some people think that it has undergone some sort of acid melting or heat melting of some sort.
Yeah.
Apparently you can see it, but again, I don't know without looking at it real close up, but apparently the grain size is smaller.
And as far as tool marks go, like we definitely see like there's hammering, looks to me like there's hammering tool marks on a lot of this stuff, but then that gets smaller and finer until it even just disappears on the joins. So it's not only maybe the crystal size gets smaller, it's like however it was shaped, or if it was even shaped with a hand tool or with a tool, that process got finer and finer the closer to the joinery you get. And I'd love to see an analysis on that crystal size and the actual mated surfaces. We'll get a closer look at these surfaces at another wall here, the Inca Roca wall. But I like this example too. Like this is one of the alleyways. The Coricancha's on the left, and you've got an Inca wall on the right, and then you've got a modern plastered wall on top of that may be covered up colonial stuff or something. You have this real, mix of different styles of architecture. and it's a working, living city that, you know, it's just it's such a fun place to visit.
You'd almost have
And
to
again, it's a
imagine
good
the
example of a block in the wall that's probably been repurposed.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
You almost have to think that the way to build a wall like that is to have a machine that both scans the surface and then cuts the negative on the next block, right? Like we use LiDAR, and we can scan that surface and get a 3D image of all of the contours of a surface, and then you have a machine that actually cuts the opposite of that contour, and then you set the block on it. And then you scan the new surface of the block that you just made and put you see what I'm saying? That's
each one has to be done
individually.
Yeah.
Every face.
Yeah.
Every block is looked individually. It's set perfectly in its own little slots, and then the next one next to it is also, we do a brick wall in this country. You know, it's one brick, next brick, next brick. It's like this one is that block perfect? Yep. Then we go to the next one. It's really strange because it's the contact surfaces, how perfect they all are, or different they all are.
Right, and how non-regular they are. That's what's amazing to me. And in fact, when we do on a future episode get inside the Coricancha, this is the outside. There's a good example in there of where the Spanish had broken apart a megalithic wall. So you can trace all the way through the thickness of the block, the joinery between these two massive pieces, and the inside's mind blowing. Like there's pieces that are like massively three-dimensional with all sorts of corners in a single block. But you can trace where this wall's been broken. Like you can't even see the joint like between the stones, but it's there. It's perfectly flat. And this wouldn't have mattered. Like you're never meant to see these joins. It's, it's one thing to make the outside look clean, but that's a precise join and a precise mating surface all the way through the stone.
I think some sort of heat was applied at some, I don't know, the way it looks, I think some sort of heat must have been applied. And I think I mentioned to you the other day, reading about those Iron Age forts that have been vitrified across Europe, which they say was done, by people setting them on fire, during the Iron Age. And the temperatures reached such a high temperature because of the way the wooden structures and thatch was built. And also the way that the what's it called? The ash makes a temper. It lands on the rock, so there was the melting point. And actually, you've got basalt which is melted and completely reformed as new basalt. And you think it was done by accident, and it looks horrible and rough, something like this. But if there's a technique there that you could actually harness and control, maybe you could do something like this. I don't know.
I just quickly want to make this point about this too with the Coricancha here is that you can see the repurposed megalithic blocks here with the cement. This was done by the Spanish.
Yeah.
So the colonial Spanish could use cement, and these are repurposed megalithic blocks in the construction of the Coricancha. You can see it all over the place where they'd run out of material and they've gone to the roughest stones that they'd found lying around to build stuff. A real mix of styles in here, and we'll let me go back to this imagery here, and I think we'll see a similar thing. If you zoom in, this is not this is the Coricancha, actually. This is another corner of it. You can see the different styles in the stonework.
Oh, yeah.
Just in the different layers. So a lot of this stone has come from Sacsayhuaman. A lot of this stone has come from the megalithic sites. Was all used in the purpose of building it. And then there's the other part of the Coricancha that's interesting is the outside.
Wow, look at that.
Another part of the outside wall, right? Yeah, this is the real famous back corner of it. This is, I think, part of the original megalithic construction.
Look how polished and how dark it is, though. It's just
it's
haunting almost, isn't it? It almost looks haunting. Something unbelievable about it.
Super precise work. It's just and in fact the inside part of this is you get on the inside of this wall and you can see the inside part of it. It's full of nubs and things like that. And then the last bit of the Coricancha I wanted to show before we move on to the streets of Cuzco here is kind of a look around out the back that's in this garden as you come out the back of the Coricancha. And again, you just see this collection of the different shapes.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll get into it in the Coricancha. There's a lot of there's tube drills. There's all sorts of almost looks like imprinted circuitry almost in some of the stones in the Coricancha. There's a lot to that place, which is why I want to dedicate some more time to it individually. It was kind of like the center of Cusco. I think this was the real profound center of this megalithic city was the Coricancha, and it's got almost a different level of work to it with some really interesting and very complicated bits of stonework, and you can kind of see how it's this hodgepodge of construction that's happened over centuries. That starts with megalithic and builds up from there with Inca and then colonial and then modern. But it's a beautiful spot to visit today. They kind of have this graveyard of these bits and pieces. It's like, figure it out. There's all this stuff everywhere.
Little clues for you.
Yeah. There's actually a little museum over here nearby that has one of the elongated skull, like a little baby elongated skull person there.
Yeah, look at that. Wow.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, just the juxtaposition of styles right there.
Yeah.
Modern.
Incredible with the white buildings. Yeah.
Yep. Colonial. Yeah, Cusco, you can't beat the pyramids and the size and scope of Egypt, but there's something about South America and Peru that it's everywhere. That sites are great, and the whole experience just in Cusco, you're staying in a place has these roots. I think it's tremendously ancient. And I think we're going to move here to the classic Inca Roca.
I also agree with Matt that there's something haunting, which is the word he used. There's something haunting about it, and it may be in part because we have so little information. But it's also the work is just it's incomprehensible. It just doesn't make sense on so many levels. And
because whoever built it, whether it's 500 years old or 10,000 years old, why bother building a wall in a city like this? I mean, why bother? I don't know. It just doesn't make any sort of logical sense. I mean, I know there's earthquakes and stuff in the region, but why aren't all the walls earthquake proof? If that's the case, I don't know.
Yeah, and the skill, like that curve.
Why are they pillowed out?
Yeah, in some cases they're pillowed, but and then you showed us that curved corner. That's just freaking. It's just a beautiful flat, and you're just like, okay, whoever did this was a master at working in stone, and they could clearly pretty much do whatever they wanted with it. And so you have to ask, well, what were they doing and why, and what was their mindset? And that's part of what makes it haunting, like you said, because it's just you look at this.
And even if they did use copper tools and chisels and they rubbed the stones back and forth, okay, it's working out how long that would take.
Yeah.
How many people you would need to do that. And have you got those resources when you need to do farming, agriculture, defend yourself, train people, arm yourself? If you got the time to build the wall in this style, if that was how it was done, you think, I don't know, it was quite tribal, wasn't it? Through the Inca and just before the Inca times, it wasn't a very safe and secure place. It wasn't like there was one culture that dominated. It was a mess by all accounts. So,
right,
it's a thing against to say it was done by a directly pre-Inca culture was because there wasn't a level of cohesion in society to actually achieve this sort of work. It needs lots of people coming together, working together as an organized society to lay out jobs, agriculture, feeding these workers that are doing this. And by all accounts, it didn't exist.
Yeah.
There was no central power until the Inca came in and there was a central power.
Yes, that's right. And I think personally, my opinion is that whereas in Egypt, you have this continuation as almost a direct connection between, I think, the Egyptian culture and what they would call their ancestors and the builder culture, if you like. But it seems to me in South America, there's almost like a bigger gap. Like there's something the megalithic culture that built this. My feeling is that there's a bigger gap that there was nothing. It was like it was abandoned, disappeared for whatever reason, wiped away. Maybe it was cataclysm, maybe it was something else.
Yep.
But then you had later cultures like the Wari or the Kilki and perhaps then the Inca would come along, and they didn't have the same connection to their past in the way that you have with the Egyptian culture, where they talk about Zep Tepi and the Sacsayhuaman and stuff. There's just a bigger gap here in my mind.
Yeah, what you have is the like the legends of Viracocha, right? That he shows up and people were living in caves, didn't know how to speak anymore, had forgotten about clothes, and were eating each other, and he has to teach them how to talk and how to farm and how to build, and that's supposed to, you know, in those myths, it comes from the depths of antiquity. I mean, they explain it as being, this was, you know, before everything. This was the beginning of everything. So and yet you still get this hint that they had fallen to that state, and he had to come and teach them how to be what they were before that, right? So it's almost like you still get the 3 stages implied in the myth. I don't know if that's really what they're saying, but you still get this idea that they had, because they're saying they forgot how to speak, and you're like, okay, well, if you forgot, that means you used to know, which means you fell to this completely almost animalistic place and then had to be taught again by Viracocha or the Viracochas. So
unless this was easy for them, they just knew something that we don't.
Yeah.
They knew how to make this wall pretty easily. They had the technology, they had the know-how that we just can't fathom because we don't know how they did it. Maybe there is a way that people could do it somehow. I don't know.
That's what I think.
It's the other option, isn't it?
There almost has to be, into my mind. That's when I was talking about the toffee-like substance. It's like I can't explain it. I don't understand it's just an intuition that's, I think it feels like that's the way you would do this. If you could change the consistency of the stone, and maybe that almost explains some of the nubs too in some ways. Like if you could imagine it setting, and the scoop marks, and you had to like press something like wood and scaffolding into it to hold it there, and then it would set, and that's what formed these perfect inside surfaces. Because to me, the idea of doing this with hammers and chisels and to get the perfect nature of these inside joins, and we're going to see that here around this corner, because you will get a closer look at these lips that are on these joins, and then the interior joint surfaces, because this wall has, you know, it's been shifted and fallen apart, and there's a bunch of blocks where they don't have neighbors, but we can see the joining surfaces. And that's where just my mind is blown when looking at this, because it's incredibly sharp. The edges are sharp. They're very flat. As you said, no tool marks on it. You just can't, I don't understand how you do that by hand. And it's such a relative to the pillow shape and everything else, there's that perfect lip of where these stones were touching, almost as if they were soft and then they formed that way. Like
it'd be good to sort of scan the surfaces with like a electron microscope and see if there's imperfections in the protruding bits on one side and to see if they were pressed together somehow, so you can actually see if that surface is imprinted onto that surface and on a fine scale. I don't know. That's one way of maybe doing that and seeing if there's anything in it.
Yeah, I wonder if the nubs were maybe where they pressed a tool that caused the surface to, I don't know, become molten. I don't know, but it just seems like the nubs are like the result of, say, removing the tool or something, and they're just kind of, they just.
Yeah, you stick the tool on there.
On the bottom, or pretty much on the bottom, aren't they? They're on the blocks. They're not on the top of the blocks. They're always at the bottom in this region.
Yeah, and that's why people that talk about geopolymers think they were injection sites. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
They look like tool marks. To me. I mean, it's so. I don't know. They're just.
This kills me. This inside join here, where there's a lip that consistently runs across 3 or 4 blocks, right?
Yes.
Then there was a piece here, and you just see this everywhere where these blocks are touching, and it's a curved surface. Like there's nothing.
It's perfect, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand it. It is.
That's a hard igneous rock, which is not easy to carve.
Granite or diorite, I think, some of these Inca Roca walls. Very, very hard rock to work.
So this part of the wall, it's like you can tell that it's been rebuilt. There's like mortar or something in between some of the blocks. Like it fell down and they tried to use the rubble to rebuild it, but they didn't know how to put the pieces back together.
That's right.
And in some cases they found, this block cracked in half, so stick those together, but they couldn't find where it was supposed to match with other ones. Yeah, it's really cool.
And what caused that to happen? I wonder.
Yes, right. What knocked these walls down? That's the other aspect that you see in a lot of these sites, is there's evidence of cataclysmic damage, and and
That's not me trying to fix a wall. That is.
And it's also it's like
that's what I do. It might be that good.
But that's the funny thing about it. That's what we do today. We use mortar. We use less precise techniques than what the ancients did in a lot of ways. You know, we use mortar, and it's that's one of the aspects to it that always really, I think, drives the point home. It's same thing in Egypt, like with Petrie and the drill holes and stuff. We didn't develop the technology to be even able to understand what we're seeing from a manufacturing perspective until like the 18th century, like late 18th, early 19th century. Like that's astounding to me. That we couldn't put any of this stuff into context in Egypt. And it's a similar thing here. There's such a, obviously there's some high form of technology in the past, and then there's been such a long dip for thousands of years, and we're coming out of it now, and it's like, no, it was fine. It was done by hand. They can't possibly have had any technology in the past. I'm like, I think the evidence that we look at is it begs to differ.
Now the base of that wall is a bit weird though, you know?
Base?
The base. Yeah. At the bottom of where we were looking earlier, it looked a lot rougher than not here. That looks
it looks like they rebuilt that whole.
I think
because over there you can see like there's like cobbles and pebbles at the base of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's been rebuilt.
Yeah.
I'm sure if not the Inca, then even modern, I'm sure some of this has been put back together with just pushing this. Because I mean, once you figure out, it's like a jigsaw puzzle, I guess, when you put it back together.
Yeah.
Probably fits pretty well. And then parts of it I think are still standing. And original.
I love the way the course lines look going across that wall down the whole length of it. Just how jagged it is, but they're continuous, right?
Yeah,
you can see
courses.
that course.
Yeah,
it's incredibly jagged, but
I think there's a video I saw recently on YouTube where somebody made a scale model of either this wall or Sacsayhuaman out of gypsum, and just like small little blocks, and they put it all together, and then they moved the wall, moved it around, and it just wouldn't fall over. Like even like moved it quite a lot, and it wouldn't fall over at all. Vibrated it, wouldn't budge. So it's so incredibly brilliant the way it's done. It's
solid, right?
It should stay there forever. Yeah.
Which again makes you wonder, how did that wall collapse? What caused that? That must have been pretty serious.
Yeah.
And the other thing you wonder is because it looks.
Oh wow! Look at that.
It looks like. I mean, when you're just looking at it, you're like, it's random, like they were just fitting randomly, fitting each block. But you have to wonder, did they actually sit down and design the entire thing? And all those shapes have a reason, there's a reason they're shaped that way, and it's not just whimsical. Like, was each shape purposeful? In other words, like, so they set out to create that wall in every individual block for a purpose. And that's why they look that way, not because they were just randomly making block shapes and then fitting them. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't imagine. Yeah. It's one of those things which is like making the pyramid up as you go along. Similar thing here. I think there must have been a plan. Like a lot of this, I don't know if you can achieve it just by making it up whimsically.
Right.
So and therefore, was there a function, like maybe it was specifically for solidity or to hold it together? And if that's the case, was there some computer that was modeling this before they did it that kind of gave them the plan?
Exactly.
Yeah, and where's all the dust from grinding those stones down? I mean, God, that would have been a huge pile.
That's a good point.
A lot of mess. Here's another example of the types of architecture you see around Cuzco, and this is similar to some of the Coricancha stuff, where it is quite like straight and regular, but just again, some astonishing different shapes in the stone. And you also have the iconography on a lot of these with snakes on the lintel block. And
there's a purpose for that, isn't it? There's a purpose. That's the reason why that's there. It's not an accident. They've included that little sculpture on the right.
Is that high relief, Ben?
Yeah.
Yep. Hard to do. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, hard to do. And who knows if this was even Inca, maybe could have shaped the block, put that in there. Don't know. Like it just, there definitely, the Inca did work on some stuff. And we'll see an example of that when we get to Brian in a minute.
I'd say that the blocks above it look like those were added, but everything below has the same sort of color. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Yep. Wow. It's just beautiful.
And it all melds into the street.
Yeah.
So there's a closer look at this crazy little
zigzag
pattern in the stone. that you see. And there's like, it's amazing, this place too. There's some restaurants you go into that have a big megalithic wall in the restaurant. Like it's just part of the structure, and they've kept it, they've exposed it, and it just.
It's like that guy was just showing off, right? He's
That's
just like,
yeah, that Mason. He was just
he was like, all right, check this out.
This one out. Put a little round nub here for you guys to figure out in 1,000 years.
Just to wind us up, just to wind us up.
To wind us up, figure it out.
What's the purpose? There's no purpose at all. We just did it just for fun.
We'll put some snakes on this one.
Yeah,
there you go. There's a block for you guys. Right?
Yeah, I know. That's what I said. Snakes for us right there.
But man, I tell you what, if I could build walls like that, every wall I build would look like that.
Yeah. God, come on.
That's what I've said about the geopolymer idea. I'm like, man, if we could do that easily with geopolymer, then whoever figures out that formula stands to make a fortune in landscape.
That's right.
Government contracts.
Yeah. So this is like just wandering around the street at night, and stuff like this. This is just a piece hanging out, and this is like it goes back into this area and into this restaurant and building. It's just leftover megalithic blocks
with the inset. Oh
wow.
Man, look at that thing.
That's ridiculous.
Just stuff like this floating around on street corners. There's a tremendous amount of it. Like there's obviously the real famous spots of it, but you find this stuff really everywhere.
Man.
You got the nub below it, that's like two eyes almost below.
Yep, right.
Strange.
Very odd. More snakes. And like crazy like angles to this, like little blocks that have been cut into the corners of that bigger one, and then a nice curved surface here for some like curved corner.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, whimsical is the right word. Another weird.
Oh wow.
Like
that one.
Like a key lock kind of block. That's
also there's humanoid with like a triangular head and 4 limbs. I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, it is kind of, isn't it? Yeah, I guess you could make that that's the head, and then that's the body.
Mind plays tricks. Who knows?
Yep. Just little doorways and gardens, little courtyards, and so there's an interesting, and we get into this with talking to Brian Forrester about this stuff. There were a lot of megalithic courtyards, and we sort of talk about it in one of the videos, but it's almost proof that the Inca didn't build everything, because it's only the first, I think I forget the actual number of Inca rulers. They all rebuilt megalithic courtyards for themselves. So every time there was a change of ruler, they would create a new palace, a new courtyard, and started with Manco Capac, who was the first guy. And they would progressively, like the first 9 of them or whatever, they would progressively rebuild these megalithic courtyards and call it their own place. And then the rulers after that, there was no more megalithic courtyards to rebuild. So they would, all of the palaces after a certain number of the Inca rulers, the guys who came later, would have these places built out of the little local stone in that rough local style. And the empire didn't last that long, talking like 150, 200 years. So it's hard to imagine that they both then immediately developed the technology to build megalithic stuff and then lost that capability within a couple generations. Or just one generation between different kings. It's a pretty clear indication they were rebuilding older megalithic stuff, and then they just ran out of megalithic sites to rebuild in Cuzco. So the last few, high Incas, when they built their palaces, they were just made from the little local stones in that rough, sort of typical Inca style.
Yeah,
just a good indication.
Makes sense.
And there's 9 megalithic gardens. Is that what you're saying?
I think something like that. Yeah, it's in my video with Brian. One of the videos with him. Maybe I'll throw a link in down below in the description for people that want to look that up. But kind of the last thing that I have here on video, and this is a nice section we can sit back and watch it. It's a segment from a long interview that we did with Brian Forrester, I think 2015 or 16. And this was like the walk and talk at the end of it. And my point with this was to connect it back to Sacsayhuaman, to show that originally did flow all the way down the hill, down into Cusco, probably all the way to the Coricancha originally. Like that, I think that was the scope of the original megalithic construction here. And this is up in the hillsides of Cusco, on the way up to Sacsayhuaman, and it's basically a big chunk. We'll get to this part where it's more or less a big chunk of a wall like Sacsayhuaman or like the Coricancha. And I think it's just a clear indication, and you see these all over the place randomly of what's left, that this once was a much more massive megalithic site. Like there was, I think, that just tremendously more stone and more building here than is left today. The scope of it was huge. So.
Well, we've done another 30-minute segment. So do you want to do this after the break? Is it a long video? Yeah.
Maybe let's do that. We'll finish with we'll finish with this Brian Forrester thing, and then we can wrap after that.
All right. Excellent.
For the final segment here, we're going to look at more of the Coricancha. Is that right, or are we done with that?
Done. Well, yes, we will definitely look at the Coricancha in another episode. I'll take a closer look at it. But this is the segment of a wall that is sort of halfway between Cuzco and Sacsayhuaman. So I think it sort of shows the continuity of what was the original megalithic construction here.
Okay.
And I'll set this up because we can listen to this. And this was part of an interview we did a long sit down with Brian Forrester. He spent an afternoon with us. It's me in the shot, my buddy Luke, and this was just a little walk and talk. We were up in the area of what is known as the Plaza of the San Cristobal Plaza. It's up in the hills because Cusco's in this big bowl, and this is kind of halfway up one of the slopes towards Sacsayhuaman. So kind of the hill. On the top left of the screen here is at the top of that is where Sacsayhuaman is. And you'll see there's megalithic construction all the way down the hill into the city. You know, like I said, I think originally there was a lot more of it. And I think it got knocked around and destroyed and then recycled and repurposed as the Inca and Manco Capac would build his palace. And in fact, this where we're going originally was Manco Capac's palace and his estate. So this is part of the area that was rebuilt. But you get some good examples, and it's nice. We sit back, let Brian chitty chat, and sort of show you a couple of things there, because he's a real expert down here. He's lived down in Peru for a long time now. So wandering around Peru with him, he kind of knows a lot of the nooks and crannies that you can get into. And this isn't actually a public area. I'm pretty sure it's just a private boarding house, and we just sort of snuck up in there, and there wasn't anyone around, and took a look at the wall. It's an interesting little spot. So tell me, you guys should be able to hear this. When we hit play.
All of a sudden, all the fence is gone. So you can see that Sacsayhuaman right there.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. All right.
So originally, Sacsayhuaman went from the top all the way down to the city. And that's why we find bits and pieces of it.
Get us all breathing hard on.
Yeah.
I'm used to it now. In a month up here, the altitude.
Yeah, it is, like I said, 11,500 feet.
I still find Lake Titicaca a pain in the ass. Though.
Yeah.
I had a couple hard days in tune-up for sure.
Yeah.
The air is definitely thin up there.
Yeah, Lake Titicaca is like 13,000, 12.5, and way up
So
there.
I've been chewing it in coca leaves this summer. It's chewing like crazy the last time.
Yeah, the first 2 weeks I was chugging WT.
There's a dog bark
Till
coming
your
up there.
face
It's
goes numb.
going to be a little loud. Lucky he wasn't out attacking us.
Oh,
Oh, good. The dog.
Crank up the compression.
Dog used to be in here.
that's good.
But this is where you'll see. Like this is transition. Oh well, forget that. But there, see, right there.
Yeah.
They said to yell.
Yeah.
This is obvious.
Right.
Underneath, this is basalt, again, from a quarry 50 kilometers away.
Right.
On top of it is Inca construction.
Right.
Because the Spanish knew what concrete was. As soon as they came here, they found sources of materials to make concrete. And so they would have used concrete. But the Inca, in this case, this may not have been super significant to the Inca. That's why they didn't do nice, tight work. But you have the difference. Andesite, local, basalt from a great distance. Strange depressions and sometimes protrusions. Here's here's a classic knob type thing. You can see you could lash or put a rope under here to help lift it. The problem is it's not in the center. So since it's not in the center, it would go that way.
Yeah.
So it had to, and this one here, another one.
Yeah. And that's the sort of, that's just everywhere now. You can just, that block, Cuzco, what's down.
Yeah.
And this looks like, is this Inca wall? Is this
Yeah.
an Inca wall?
This is Inca.
Because these blocks here have been repurposed, right?
Yeah, well,
Maybe.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
There's the Coricancha.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I think. Buenas.
Buenas.
Got there. And
I guess let's go.
Sneak up there.
I'll go behind you.
I'll just say it also is just, I love the ambient sound too, like the birds chirping.
Yes.
It's just a beautiful area. Like it's such a lovely spot. But,
Yeah.
We'll let him keep going here.
Colonial Spanish with concrete. And then megalithic.
Wow, this is amazing. Huh? Yeah. Who knows what's here?
So it's just for a description of people listening. We're in a courtyard up near a little guest house, and there's just a big section of wall, just like what you find in the Coricancha. It's a megalithic wall, no joinery, just this perfect big chunk of it that's just sort of in somebody's backyard, halfway up the hill to Sacsayhuaman.
So this effect here on these two stones,
Yeah.
what's going on there? Is that just age, or are we talking about some kind of vitrification, or?
We're talking the possibility that this is catastrophic damage. It's not damage from stones being on top of it, but our theory is that in Egypt and here, and in a few other parts of the world, that there was the civilization that did this work did so more than 12,000 years ago. The way we date that is the fact that there was a global catastrophe that happened approximately 12,000 years ago. It came from space. It could have been plasma ejection from the sun, according to Robert Schoch, or it could have been the emission of lethal energy from the center of our galaxy, which Paul de la Violette believes, who's a physicist. He believes that the center of our galaxy is not a black hole, but is a pulsar. So approximately every half precessional cycle, which is 13,000 years, more or less, it emits energy, which is lethal, which moves across the galactic plane, creating things like disturbing small planets, catching comets and altering their course. So it could be that a comet did this. And so there was, especially at high altitude as well, like here, that this disturbance was so profound that this could be the damage from that 12,000-year-old catastrophic event, which would have wiped out whoever was here.
And obviously, Pumapunku was hit pretty hard by something. A lot of these.
Yeah, exactly. And the latest theory about that is that actually the volcano where the gray andesite comes from, that its last eruption may have been about the same time. It might have been triggered by the cataclysmic event, because that was when the ice age ended. And according to Robert Schoch, the melting that happened of the poles that caused the water of the oceans to rise by 300 plus feet could have taken place in less than 2 weeks, because it wouldn't have been the melting of the poles. It would have been the vaporization of ice going into the atmosphere, supersaturating it, and then it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, or whatever you want to say, causing the rising of sea level. And that could also have resulted in our planet going from being vertical to 23.5 degrees, because Uranus is rotating like this. And the universe wasn't set up catastrophically or like in a weird way like that. Something obviously happened. So I think that's what we're looking at. And there's lots of evidence of this in Egypt.
Yes.
And Machu Picchu, there was something pulled those stones apart.
That's the only damage structural damage significant that I've seen to any of these. They're still standing, like in more or less in one piece. That's the only piece that seems like it's, really damaged. Radically shifted. Yeah.
Right.
So much of this stuff is still perfect.
Yeah. Well, it was built so well, but it's earthquake proof, but it's not catastrophic earthquake proof. And so that would have been a one-time event. And again, the Inca likely found this the way it is and didn't touch it, but they would have used the stone that had fallen down and recycled it to rebuild what was Manco Capac's palace.
We see that at Sacsayhuaman as well, right? When they may rebuild the walls and backfill them with some of the actual shaped blocks.
Exactly. And, it's obvious in many of the streets of Cuzco. You'll see a complete andesite wall with this rectangular block of basalt stuck into it. And that isn't because it's artistic or because it's for strength. It's because it was lying on the ground, and why not use it? And we'll see more. This is all Manco Capac's palace.
Oh, wow.
I think this is half of a frog. This is Inca, but this is Inca reusing the basalt. And you see, if this is the quality of Inca craftsmanship, that's much, much better. If this was all done by the same masons, this would be far more refined. But it's not, because this was shaped using probably meteorite iron.
I guess this is one of the greatest similarities between South America and Egypt, is that the early stuff is the oldest stuff, is the best stuff, has the best work going on.
Right.
It's the harder stone.
Yeah, and the same in Turkey and Italy. The Parthenon in Greece is built on top of a megalithic structure. That was done by the gods. The Titans were not a story. The Titans were people, but the Titans got wiped out. And then came their descendants, the Greeks, who stole all their information from the Egyptians. And all the Egyptian information comes from people before too. Yeah, the Cometians, or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and when you guys went around the corner of that, and Kyle was mentioning this before we even started the show, but the damage on that block, it looks like there's like a sphere inside of what there's some kind of spherical shape that's inside of what they turned into a block, like they pasted something. I don't know. It's hard to describe.
I think that's because of the crystalline structure of the basalt.
Yeah, probably right.
Pretty sure.
Yeah.
There's 2 blocks next to each other, weren't they? It was just like 2 blocks and the wall was fine, but not just there. It's really strange.
Yeah, just those 2 blocks right next to each other on the edge were damaged.
They got nailed by a cosmic ray.
Yeah, that one just focused on that block. It is kind of odd. It's just that the selectively damaged here and there, but yeah, it's hard to say what happened there.
Yeah,
it does look strange. Like it's that peeled surface. We saw some of it in some of the other clips too. I think at Sacsayhuaman, and you can see around the Coricancha,
an outer layer.
Yeah. An outer layer that's come off, it's peeled off. You do see a similar thing in Egypt on some of the granite, that there's like a surface layer that's come off for whatever reason. I think we looked at some of that discolored granite and some of those things around the Hafra pyramid last week. So, there's these threads that kind of weave their way through a lot of these similarities.
Consistencies,
So what about the vitrification? Do you guys think that some of those surfaces are vitrified? Has that actually been studied and shown, or is it just like it looks like that?
I mean, there's been a number of studies that have been done. There's been a number of, I don't know how in depth they are, not probably full scientific papers, but there's a guy called Helmut Trebuch who did a study because he believes it's acid that formed it, that melted and molded the stone. They used acid, and he did a full study looking at vitrified surfaces and the contact between blocks. But then there's a couple of sort of long form articles out there on the internet from people that have looked at maybe heats being applied to it, again, comparing it to the Iron Age forts, that there was extreme heat applied to the walls, maybe as a finish, maybe to sort of make the joints perfect and to give them a sort of a finish over the edge. But again, in reality, no one really knows. I don't think the work's been done. I don't think the amount of work's been done. I think you need to compare a lot of sites, a lot of different walls. You need to do geological analysis of the actual blocks, which probably need to be taken away to a lab, which probably will never happen because it won't be allowed. But if you could, all that work to be done, then you'd get a little bit closer to the truth. Then you've still got hundreds more questions.
Right. And some experimentation to try and do it. I know Antonio Mora was trying to create vitrified surfaces on rocks for a little while. I haven't seen where he's gone with that, but I know I saw a video where he was like blow torching rocks and trying to figure out, just experiment to see.
That's great though, isn't it? I love all that. I love
limestone.
You've got the know-how.
Fractures. You can't. It's you try to do that with limestone and it just starts to shatter. You can't. As far as I know, you can't really melt the stuff.
Yeah, there's definitely evidence for. I mean, the stone's vitrified. It has that shiny surface. And you see it on the older styles, like the Hanan Pacha and the Uran Pacha.
Yeah.
You don't see it on the Inca work. And some people say, "Wow, this is evidence of the cosmic ray stuff." But I've also seen it undercover. Like I've seen it in areas where there's a roof over it. So Kenko, for example, there's areas like that wouldn't have been exposed to the sky, but you still have vitrified stone in there.
There's a process, isn't there?
Yeah, it seems like
there's a process that we don't know, but it's something to do with heat of some sort that created a vitrified surface. But how, why, acid, heat, temperature.
Right. And another link that exists between Peruvian ruins and Egyptian ones are the keystone cuts, right? They're found in both places. Yeah. And have they found, I mean, are there actual keystone, whatever the metal was, do they have some of those still, or are those usually all gone?
I imagine most of them have been gone if they are, but yeah, we saw a couple of examples of things that might have operated like that here. I'm not certain if there's still examples of them or not.
Yeah.
I think there have been a few examples found, but I don't know off the top of my head with what they're made of and much about them. But I think you can see them in a lot of different cultures across the world. There's similar cuts, and some people say there's stone that was put in there, others metal, and there's a few examples. I think.
Right. And if it was metal, you'd be pouring it in place, right? It's
of course, to join the blocks together to keep them again even more solid.
Right.
Well, there's definitely, if that's what you're talking about, like key locking.
Yeah.
Like that what you mean. Definitely that there's, I mean, Tiwanaku for sure.
Yeah.
I think you see some examples of it again inside the Coricancha, which we'll get to. We'll just tease that episode. Well, maybe we'll do that next week or next time.
Yeah.
We'll get into to take a closer look at that stuff too. Definitely some of those. And there's another similarity, of course, between Egypt and here in the stonework is that you have those examples of where stones are kind of go around the corner. You don't have that linear fault line. You see it at Sacsayhuaman. You definitely see it at the Coricancha. Very similar to like the Valley Temple.
I think it's a great example there, isn't there?
Yeah, just it wraps those corners. And I guess the theory is that the stone was carved, like it's put in place and then it's the corners kind of cut out of it.
But harder to do.
It is very much harder to do
than just having a block that way. Yeah.
Right. You're right. And but the effect being that you don't have those continuous fault lines, which makes it much more earthquake or earthquake proof or just vibration proof. It locks itself into its structure and not something we typically do a lot of today.
And it looks better. It looks great. It looks quality and we're impressed.
Absolutely.
Still impressed.
Yeah.
Well, man, this has been fascinating. Again, Ben, thank you very much. And Matt, your knowledge and information on all of this stuff has been great too. So thank you.
I'm always trying to learn. It's never over, is it? The learning?
No, sir.
That's
Not at all.
The more we learn, the more we realize we don't know anything.
That's right.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah. That's what we've concluded.
Yeah.
We knew nothing at the start. We know nothing now.
That's right. We know even more about the nothing we know.
That's right. Yes, we're starting to realize the gaps of like the extent of the things we don't know.
That's right. That's it.
Yeah. It's kind of how you can give yourself a clue. It's not quite done in,
Yeah.
Like you start realizing that you just further away from the answer than you thought you were. Like, okay, this must mean we're getting somewhere. I don't know. But,
that's right.
Yeah, it's a frustrating aspect to all of this. I know a lot of people are like, oh, are we ever going to figure it out? I'm like, I'm not sure. I don't know, but it's a lot of fun looking. And and I certainly, I am always calling for, let's do more. Let's apply more science. Let's try and figure it out with an open mind. Like that seems to always be the key. Like we need to be open to some of these alternative methods. And as you said, test them in the marketplace of ideas and throw them out, keep them in. That's the whole process. Why you argue, right? You take the good from the bad and you evolve your ideas over time.
If you're out of theory, you got to try and disprove it.
Yes,
you got to look at it hard. Well, I think these walls are made this way. Okay, now you got loads of evidence for it. Now disprove it. And if you can't disprove it, well, you might have solved it.
Yep.
I don't know.
And it is frustrating to think about, how long we can study this stuff and how we may never know the answers. But at the same time, I'm so glad that there are puzzles like this.
Yeah.
Because how boring would the world be if we didn't have things like this to wonder about, mysteries like this to ponder?
Yeah. I love mystery and I hate mystery at the same time.
Yeah, that's right. It's a love-hate relationship for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think the mysteries. It's also I think it's a attractive element to these sites. It's like, man, if the establishment could maybe even embrace more of that, it might help them get more tourism, which is great, more dollars to protect and preserve these things and to fund more work research that needs to go on there. It's like. I think more people would be interested. I mean, not that people aren't interested in these sites. I mean, they're very, very popular tourist destinations as it is, but
if they highlighted the most incredible aspects of it to the wider world, it would increase tourism. And that's what especially now, it's what countries need, isn't it? Egypt, especially, Peru, they could do with lots of people coming in.
Yeah, but academia doesn't get grants to discover mysteries. They get grants to come up with answers.
Yep.
True. This is true. Yeah.
It's too bad.
Too bad. They're doing it wrong.
Yeah. No, well, hopefully they do a little more here at these places. The pace does seem to be pretty slow in terms of the real scientific work happening here. I know it's tightly controlled by the authorities here as well in terms of what you can do, what you can't do, and whether or not it sort of gets in the way of the I guess the established narrative. And there's a lot of cultural aspects mixed up down here as well. Like there's a lot of pride, I'd say, in the idea that this is the Inca, because you obviously the people here are the descendants of the Inca, and it's there's some people get offended when you say the Inca don't do it, and I've had that experience, in fact, pretty directly. It's the usual sort of straw man argument. Well, if you didn't think the Inca did it, then you must think the aliens didn't. You must think the Inca were just useless and hopeless. I'm like, no, that's not at all.
Yeah.
What we're saying, and in fact, the Inca did incredible work, and they terraformed the Sacred Valley. They terraced it. They had an amazing civilization, but
how big was that empire? Huge.
Yeah, empire, amazing. And it was a tragedy what happened to them, and it, but they still, I don't think, had the capability to do some of the stuff that we're seeing. So it sort of keeps that question open. It certainly doesn't mean that it was aliens or something else, but I think there is a more complicated answer to it than just, well, the Inca did it. It's the same answer you get in Egypt. Well, the Egyptians just did it. It's just national project, bro. They just applied themselves, and
And the fact that
you can't get around the technology.
Also, the fact that the Inca revered and preserved what they found there says a lot about who they were.
That's right.
And
ancestors important.
Yeah. So I agree with you. There's nothing. It's not an insult to say that it doesn't seem like they built that other stuff, like the megalithic stuff. It's just looking at data and trying to figure out what's going on there.
Indeed. Awesome.
Yep.
Cool.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. This was fun.
Thank all of you.
Yeah.
That was another fantastic episode. Looking forward to more.
Yep.
Yeah, let's do it. I got a lot more sites. As you said, I got a lot more sites that we haven't seen. Lots more video footage.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, guys. Good night. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cheers, man.
Cheers.
And there you have it, folks. Fantastic interview with Ben, as always, and Matt. And yeah, I wanted to give a quick shout out to Space Ramen Shaman.
Yeah.
Thanks for the incredibly long email with all of the awesome stories, bro.
That's right. It was great.
It was really cool. Not to be read on the show, but still, you get a shout out.
Yeah.
And this one's for you, buddy.
Also I just love the name, Space Ramen Shaman.
Yeah, I know. Space Ramen. Genius.
Manna from the heavens, Space Ramen.
But yeah, that was, man, just again, Ben nails it.
Yep.
With the raw footage. It's his prepared videos and all the stuff that he makes on his channel is equally awesome. But it is really cool to sit down and just go through the raw footage, the whole walk across a site, and just have him, just have a conversation with him about the footage as you're watching it. It's just really amazing. And, so many things, so many questions, so many ideas and comments come to mind. I could do this for hours and hours.
Yeah. Yeah, we live for this.
So yeah, hopefully we're asking all the questions you guys want us to ask.
Yeah,
probably not. Some of you are probably screaming into your headphones.
Yeah, I can hear some people shouting at their phones and their computers. But I did. Speaking of that, though, I did want to bring up something, and we can just talk about this real briefly about the rough nature. This is from previous Swapcast with Ben. He was showing us the Khafre enthroned statue and how beautiful it is and smooth and polished and everything. Even the complex parts of it are polished, but then the hieroglyphs that are cut into the sides are rough and not polished on the interior. And some people were pointing out, well, maybe they filled them with gold.
Yes, I saw this conversation in the Discord.
I think that's a great point.
The problem I have with it is that they clearly were able to make rough tool marks, like in other words, they didn't have to polish it.
Yeah.
There are clear areas that are rough enough to hold on to the gold, but that are perfectly straight lines.
Yeah.
Whereas these hieroglyphs and some of the artistic work around the hieroglyphs are obviously not straight lines.
Yeah, they're not quite.
And
so even if they did fill them with gold, it seems like it was.
Yeah, why would you? If they were filled with gold, it doesn't change the fact to me that those were done by hand.
Yeah.
When whoever made the boxes or made the statues clearly had the ability to engrave within them perfectly.
Yeah.
And they could even, you should be able to set the tool to make a rough finish, a jagged.
Yeah. That's right. And I also think that another way to explore that question is to find out what the interior contours of some of those deep set hieroglyphs are, like in the Khafre enthroned. Like there's the bird, and a lot of Egyptian hieroglyphs, the contour at the bottom of the glyph, when it's cut in, you still see shapes, and they put the eye of the bird in there, and you can see some lines for the feathers. So if you're looking at like the owls that are, for example, on the obelisks, they're cut into the obelisk, but there's all these contours on the bottom that still give you like details of the owl.
Mm-hmm.
And if they were just going to fill it with gold, you wouldn't do that.
Yeah, that's true. Gold leaf, on the other hand,
Yeah, now if it was just leafed,
because you're with gold leaf, you can actually just apply it with a brush.
Yeah,
and it will still have the exact contours that you made because it's so thin.
Yep.
But yeah, you do want
harder to steal that though.
True.
You just sit there and scrape all the gold leaf off there, I guess, because it's all gone.
It's probably not really enough to even do anything with.
Right. So it's all gone. So it's like somebody stole it. Now, if it was filled with gold, you could just pull that out of there and you have a big block of gold.
Or it just came out over the ages because it does require an adhesive, to keep it in there for any length of time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could have. I don't know. I agree with your point. They're not going to fill that with gold to make a smooth face.
Right.
When they have the details already set inside,
Yeah.
I mean, those details would not show up on the face of the gold inset.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, they could have been painted. They could, there's any number of. I don't know. I think it's clear though that what the contrast to what Ben was pointing out is that a lot of these carvings are handwork.
Yeah.
On the outside of very fine machine work, and should be able to do it with machines.
Yeah, that's right. All right, well, I think that was another fantastic show. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
I think it was probably moldable in some way. I just want to say that about the joints. Like the joints of those stones.
You think the stone was moldable? Like they
maybe not the entire stone, like they were talking about.
Yeah.
What is the crystalline structure? Does it get finer and finer towards the joint? That was I've never heard that before. That's really cool.
Mm.
And yeah, you would need a quarry. You cut it out of the quarry, but you do something. You can cut it roughly the shape that you want, but to get that perfect fit.
Yeah, you do something to the exterior.
You do something to the outside inch or two, and that's why they're sort of pillowed, is because as it gets closer to the edge, they're scraping away that.
Yeah. Okay. I can see that.
I don't know, but it's hard to imagine that it was just hard stone the whole way.
Yeah.
And putting that together, it just seems it's hard to comprehend how that would have been done. So there's my take. My hot take, folks.
All right. Well, you guys can get a hold of us, brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. Check out the website, brothersoftheserpent.com. We got a whole bunch of cool stuff. All the podcast stuff is there, including all the merchandise. You guys can get hats and the TeePublic place. Don't forget, we got a new deal with TeePublic, so we get even more of the proceeds from that. So check that out. Also, the archive of the shows is there. You can get them in multiple ways. Links are there. There is also an RSS feed for the archive shows. And I also made that RSS link now browser viewable. So for those of you who just want to see it on the computer, you can use that same link in your browser and it'll show up as the FeedBurner browser feed. So you can actually, it doesn't just show up as code, which is what it did before. So you can either copy paste that archive RSS feed into your podcast reader, or just click on it, or copy paste it into your browser and look at it there.
Yeah, and I'm seeing your donations rolling in. My notifications are on for the pyramid scheme, and just want to say thank you all so very much.
Yes,
for your support.
That's right. And the donate buttons, if you like the show, want to help us out, get us straight to pyramids, there's a PayPal and Patreon donate button right there on the website. So thank you guys so much. And thanks to Jeff and everybody else, all the other admins in the Discord. Join the Discord on the website too. Thanks to History Shift for making all our videos. So if you're watching this, if you're watching this on YouTube, that's History Shift's work. He takes the audio that we provide him and the video, if we do provide it, like Ben is going to give us the video for this show, and he puts it together and then gets it up on YouTube. So thanks to him. And of course, thanks to all of you who listen. Yeah, we love you.
Always have.
Always will.
Good night, Inamu.
Get back to work.